Hi, welcome to my channel. The full version of the audiobook is available on my Patreon. You can quickly find it through the link in my profile description. Thank you for your support.
Chapter 1: The Most Outrageous Joke of the Century. April 8, 2000, south of Madrid, the capital of Spain. North bank of the Manzanares River, beside the M30 highway. As Yang Hao got out of the taxi from the back seat, he turned his head and could see the magnificent Calderon Stadium spanning the M30 road. Every day, a constant stream of cars passes through the tunnel beneath this crouching behemoth, and everyone who looks up can see, like Yang Hao right now, the huge bronze emblem of Atletico Madrid. In the early years, when Atletico Madrid's performance was on the rise, the team crest gave people a sense of increasing majesty. But in the last 2 years, and especially now, everyone feels more of a sense of decline and decay. This is how teams in the relegation zone should behave. Yang Hao stood at the intersection, gazing at the Atletico Madrid logo above the tunnel entrance, a sense of fervor rising within him. He straightened his suit slightly, tightened his grip on his briefcase, and strode toward the office door at Calderon Stadium. Today, he came to interview for the head coach position at Atletico Madrid. Yang Hao never dared to believe that something as impossible as time travel would actually happen to him. In his previous life, he was an unknown, struggling writer on QIDN.com in 2023, who wrote football novels for over a decade. One day, for some unknown reason, he decided to write a novel about saving Chinese football. Needless to say, it was a complete flop. Even the Namekian dragon couldn't grant these wishes, so mortals shouldn't even dream of them. The script for the Chinese national football team is never written incorrectly. The moment he decided to cut it off, he slapped himself hard across the face several times, wishing he could chop up a chicken to show his resolve. Feeling depressed, Yang Hao went to the park to clear his head. He sat on the stone railing of the pavilion in the middle of the lake to rest and to think about his new book, which was still unfinished. Unexpectedly, he accidentally fell headfirst down the railing. In that instant, he kept swearing in his mind that he would never write anything half-hearted again. I will definitely focus on writing and try my best to get votes, favorites, follow my posts, and subscribe. Help! I can't swim. As expected, God favors those men who reform and are handsome, so, he was rescued. But who could have imagined that when he finally came ashore, it would be 2000, and he would be in Madrid, the capital of Spain. Yang Hao wondered if this was punishment for writing about the national football team. As a seasoned writer who had created countless transmigration web novels in his previous life, Yang Hao's first priority after confirming that he had won the transmigration lottery was to find the transmigrator's gift package. Commonly known as Golden Finger. But after waiting and waiting, he tragically discovered that his attempt to write a book had failed, and his attempt to travel through time had failed even more. A transmigrator without even a cheat code is like someone who crashes into their grandmother's house in the very first round of testing. There's nothing we can do now that we've already transmigrated here. Fortunately, Yang Hao discovered that his new identity in this world was not bad. He actually had a coaching certificate that allowed him to coach in top leagues, and he was also fluent in 2 foreign languages, English and Spanish. This gave him the urge to tag a staff member in Barcelona. We're kindred spirits. After adapting to his identity as a transmigrator, Yang Hao began to work on his teaching plans. He's a football fan himself, has been writing football novels for over a decade, and knows professional football, past and future, inside and out. After transmigrating, he also has a coaching certificate. What job could be more suitable for him than coaching? The year 2000 was a year of great upheaval in Madrid. Real Madrid's poor performance led to the dismissal of head coach Toshak due to the team's poor results. Bosque, the reserve team coach, was brought in to save the first team for the 3rd time. With no hope of winning the league, he led this struggling and debt-ridden powerhouse team forward. Currently, Real Madrid only has the Champions League and the Copa del Rey left to compete on. The hundreds of millions of euros in debt have made Real Madrid president Sons highly controversial. Opposition leader Florentino Perez, a well-known wealthy man in Spain, is determined to overthrow Sons in the presidential election this summer. His campaign slogan was, "Pay off the debts and sign a world-class superstar for Real Madrid," Barcelona legend Luis Figo. To everyone else, this was a crazy slogan that seemed impossible to achieve. But as a time traveler, Yang Hao knew this script all too well. So he managed to infiltrate the Real Madrid attacking fan club, which Florentino Perez had specifically established for his election campaign. With his analytical skills and football knowledge accumulated from years of writing football novels, coupled with the advantages of being a time traveler and his repeated support for Vicente del Bosque, Real Madrid repeatedly defeated strong opponents in the Champions League, which made Yang Hao stand out in a fan club very quickly. Finally, he had the opportunity to speak with Florentino face to face. He subtly reminded Florentino that the superstar strategy had a fatal flaw and needed to be improved. In response to this, Yang Hao prepared a complete plan and intended to have a serious talk with Florentino. However, Florentino simply took it as him talking nonsense and trying to make a big splash. At this moment, Florentino was full of confidence and ambition for his grand plan, and he wouldn't listen to any dissent. Not only that, he also expelled Yang Hao from the attacking fan club. The reasoning is both far-fetched and reasonable. Yang Hao is not a Real Madrid member. When God closes a door for you, he often opens a window. While being turned away by Florentino, Yang Hao ran into Michel Angel Gil, the 37-year-old general manager of Atletico Madrid, who was drowning his sorrows in a bar in Madrid. Gil was known as Little Gil. Because Yang Hao criticized Florentino a few times, saying that Real Madrid would definitely suffer a great loss because of his superstar strategy, Little Gil, who had been drinking a bit, cheered for him and invited him to drink. The two became acquainted because of this. After learning about Yang Hao's relationship with Florentino Perez and listening to Yang Hao's analysis of Real Madrid and Florentino Perez's superstar strategy, Gil was very impressed and invited him to analyze Atletico Madrid. This season, Atletico Madrid has had a much tougher time than Real Madrid. Real Madrid's performance has been poor. Although their ranking once dropped to around 10th in the standings, they have a strong foundation and quickly rebounded. Now they are working hard for a Champions League spot next season. More importantly, Vicente del Bosque's team has consistently performed well in the Champions League, advancing all the way to the next round. But Atletico Madrid is different. This season, under the management of Italian tinkerer Ranieri, the team's performance has been very poor, especially after the club president Jesus Gil was imprisoned at the end of December, when the team's debt of more than 70 million euros was exposed and the government took over Atletico Madrid. Vice President Cerezo and General Manager Gil have all been suspended from their posts. During the winter break, under the leadership of interim trustee Luis Rubi Blanco, in an effort to improve the team's financial situation, Spanish golden boy José Mari was sold to Italian giants AC Milan for 19 million euros. Then, they sold Argentine centre-back José Chamit to AC Milan for 3 million euros. The two deals brought in 22 million euros, but the team's overall strength was affected. The trusteeship was met with a barrage of condemnation from the Spanish media, and Atletico Madrid fans continue to protest the trusteeship's decisions through marches and other means. Despite Ranieri's refusal to agree with the media and fans, the team's performance continued to decline, eventually falling into the relegation zone. The Italian finally submitted his resignation on March 3, and the trusteeship temporarily appointed former Atletico Madrid coach Antic to take over the team. Like Vicente del Bosque, Antic also served as manager of Real Madrid 3 times. But unlike his praise for Vicente del Bosque, Yang Hao bluntly asserted that Antic could not save Atletico Madrid. On the contrary, he will drag Atletico Madrid into the abyss of relegation. No matter how many years later, people will find Atletico Madrid's performance this season unbelievable and incomprehensible, because with Atletico Madrid's star-studded squad, they should never have been relegated. Who does Atletico Madrid have now? Spanish Prince Kiko, Dutch superstar Hasselbank, Spanish midfield prodigy Vallerin, Brazilian midfield prodigy Juninho, on loan at Middlesbrough, Argentine winger Solari, Portuguese midfield prodigy Hugo Leal, Uruguayan midfielder Pablo Garcia, Spanish midfielder Baraja, Spanish left-back Capdevila, goalkeeper Molina. Not to mention that Atletico Madrid itself has a group of strong core players, such as Tony Muñoz, Santi, José Luque, Gamarra, Sergio Ayala, Gaspar, Aguilera. From any perspective, this Atletico Madrid team is currently boasting a galaxy of stars and a wealth of talent, making them a shoo-in for a top 3 finish, or even the league title. They shouldn't be performing so poorly and facing relegation. Even in 2023, countless people were still puzzled by Atletico Madrid's relegation. Many people criticize Ranieri for his poor coaching, while others blame Gil's imprisonment for its significant impact on Atletico Madrid, and still others believe it's due to the club's financial crisis. Yang Hao told Chausier that these were all problems this season, but Atletico Madrid had a very deep-seated and fatal problem all these years, and that was the most fatal one. No one can save Atletico Madrid unless this problem is solved, including Antic, who once brought them a double. And as it turns out, Yang Hao was right. Since the 27th round of the league, Atletico Madrid's performance under Antic's management has not improved at all. 1-1 draw with Real Betis, 0-1 loss to Valladolid, 1-1 home draw with Real Madrid, 0-3 loss to Numancia, 1-2 loss to Athletic Bilbao. Then last night, in the 32nd round of La Liga, they suffered a crushing 1-4 away defeat to Deportivo La Coruña. Under Antic's leadership, Atletico Madrid not only failed to escape the relegation zone, but their ranking continued to decline. Currently ranked 19th in La Liga, only slightly better than bottom-ranked Sevilla, but already 4 points ahead of 17th-placed Real Betis, led by Gus Hiddink, who are outside the relegation zone. With 6 rounds remaining in the league, this is a situation that is almost impossible to reverse. Fans throughout Spain, throughout European football, and even around the world unanimously concluded that Atletico Madrid's relegation was a foregone conclusion. Even Atletico Madrid fans began to accept this assessment, so after losing to Deportivo La Coruña away, they organized an even larger protest, forcing the government to compromise, suspend the administration, and bring back Gil Sr., Cerezo, and Gil Jr. Clearly, neither the government nor the trusteeship group wants to bear the blame for relegating Atletico Madrid. With so many star players, to end up being relegated would be the most outrageous joke in the history of the 4 major leagues. Reinforcements are needed as quickly as possible to put out a fire. The Hills had just returned to Calderón Stadium when Gil Jr. immediately advocated for a change of manager. After 2 or 3 months of contact and several in-depth conversations, he had no doubt about Yang Hao. He firmly believes that if anyone can save Atletico Madrid from its predicament, that person must be Yang Hao. So, the day after the crushing defeat to Deportivo La Coruña, Yang Hao walked into the Calderón Stadium and stood in front of the elder Gil, Cerezo, and the younger Gil. When old Gil and Cerezo were both amazed by his youth, he made a resounding promise. Only I can help Atletico Madrid avoid relegation and become the strongest team in Spain and even Europe in the coming years. New book uploaded. Please recommend, add to your favorites, and follow my reading. I'm so grateful. End of this chapter. Chapter 2 The Number 1 Sinner. Only I can help Atletico Madrid avoid relegation and become the strongest team in Spain and even Europe in the coming years. When Yang Hao uttered these powerful words in the closed conference room, old Gil, sitting opposite him, couldn't help but burst out laughing. Although he is 67 years old, overweight, and has just been charged with multiple crimes by the government, he is still very energetic and shows no signs of dejection. This is quite normal. He is a ruthless hero who has survived countless trials and tribulations. On the contrary, Gil is more like an indecisive rich kid. You know, my son thinks highly of you. He's talked to me a lot, and even argued with me. This has forced me to take some time to sit here and listen to what you have to say. Old Gil sat there with his large belly, his fat jiggling as he laughed, his eyes fixed on Yang Hao, exuding an imposing aura. But if all you can say is this kind of empty talk, then please leave. As soon as old Gil finished speaking, little Gil, who was sitting next to him, became restless. On the other hand, 52-year-old Vice President Cerezo remained as steady as ever, as if nothing had anything to do with him. Yang Hao remained calm, he had come prepared. You've inquired about me? This is good news, proving that old Gil had given it serious consideration. There's no need to deliberately inquire. Those conversations you had with Florentino at the attacking fans meeting couldn't be kept secret. There were many people there at the time. I think Florentino was right, at least that's my first impression of you. Old Gil replied just as bluntly. Do you know that I told him that his superstar strategy has a fatal flaw? His superstar strategy? Jesus, Gil scoffed, what kind of superstar strategy does he have? He's just following in our footsteps, copying what others have said. The Atletico Madrid president certainly has the right and confidence to say such a thing. The superstar strategy is nothing new in Spain. Before the La Liga clubs were restructured, they were all members only. To run for president of a member-only club, you had to rely on votes, and the easiest way to win over fans was to promise to bring in superstars. This has always been how all membership-based clubs operate. It can even be traced back to Real Madrid's Bernabeu era, such as Di Stefano, Puskas, and Kepa. He'll also used the same strategy to rise to power. For example, he signed Portuguese superstar Paulo Futre for Atletico Madrid, or he previously signed Italian star Christian Vieri for Atletico Madrid. These were all examples of using a superstar strategy. Therefore, he truly has the right to ridicule Florentino in this way. I think he is an upgraded version of the radical and risky superstar strategy of the past. Here, Yang Hao gave Florentino a positive evaluation. Bringing Figo from arch-rivals Barcelona? No, it's about signing one superstar per year, so that every position on the team is filled with superstar players, including the coaching staff. It must be said that this idea was incredibly bold and tempting in 2000. Old Hill had to admit that too. Then tell me, what's wrong with this strategy? Is it the money? No, I believe that as a master at making money, he must have thought about how to make money, but he overlooked the time. This time, not only Old Hill, but even Cerezo was attracted. Florentino's candidacy is the most watched event in Madrid, Spain, and even the entire European football scene this season. Luis Figo was born in November 1972 and is now 27 years old. I believe that Florentino Perez must have made preparations to bring him into the race. Moreover, the media has previously reported that Florentino Perez had contact with Figo's agent, José Vega. Atletico Madrid legend Paulo Futre was also implicated in that news story. Suppose he signs Figo this year, and then another superstar next year. By then, Figo will be 28 years old. What about the year after that, and the year after that? One superstar every year is very tempting, but how long can Figo maintain his peak performance? Old Hill and Cerezo were speechless. This is indeed a problem. The football world today is completely different from the football world 10 years from now. Most of today's superstars are older. After all, players typically reach their prime around age 25. If they play for 2 years at their peak and achieve superstar status, they'll be around 27 years old. Players like Michael Owen, who rose to fame at 19, scored goals around 20, and joined the ranks of superstars, are extremely rare. Yang Hao is absolutely right. There's only one superstar every year. How many more years can Figo maintain his form at his age? Florentino doesn't want you to disrupt his plans, Old Hill said, looking at Yang Hao. Yes. Yang Hao nodded with a smile. Whether Florentino had considered this before Yang Hao pointed it out or not, at this point, the superstar strategy was already set in stone and could not be changed. He had to go for it even if he had to grit his teeth. Otherwise, which head will he use to challenge Sons this summer? That's why he refused to listen to what Yang Hao had to say, and even kicked him out of the attacking fan club. Having figured this out, Old Hill laughed heartily and began to seriously examine the young man in front of him. She is really very young. She's only 25 years old. If this were a professional athlete, they would only be entering the prime of their career. As a result, he applied for the head coach position, which required the most experience and qualifications. Go ahead and tell me, I'm interested to hear your analysis of Atletico Madrid. Old Hill shifted his position to make himself more comfortable and said. Atletico Madrid's problems are very complex. When Yang Hao wrote his previous life, he specifically researched this issue and believed that it was Chairman Hill's misconduct that led to his imprisonment, the club's mounting debts, and the team's internal morale collapse. Even renowned coaches like Ranieri and Antic were powerless to change this. However, after having an in-depth conversation with Hill and learning more about the inside story, he gained a deeper understanding. The whole thing still revolves around Old Hill. As the whole world knows, the story of how Old Hill made his fortune was not glamorous. His first pot of gold came from a shoddy construction project that resulted in the deaths of 58 people. That happened in the chaotic years of 1968, when Spain was still under the rule of dictator Franco. That was the first time Old Hill had been imprisoned. After his release from prison, Hill did not rein himself in, instead, he became even more decisive and efficient, expanding his real estate business further. Once his real estate business reached a certain level, Hill was no longer satisfied with the business world. In 1987, he took over Atletico Madrid, ambitiously aiming to transform the Madrid team into a powerhouse that rivaled their city rivals, Real Madrid. In 1991, the already famous Gil sought to enter politics through football, establishing the independent liberal group Gil Party, which was very popular in southern Spain and the island regions near North Africa, and was elected mayor of Marbella. For a time, Old Hill and Atletico Madrid were unstoppable in the spotlight. But trouble followed. In 1992, due to debt problems, the Spanish Football Federation forced La Liga teams to restructure. Except for a very few teams such as Real Madrid, Barcelona and Athletic Bilbao, all of them changed from a membership system to a shareholding system. During Atletico Madrid's restructuring process, rumors circulated that Gil and Vice President Cerezo falsified accounts and illegally privatized Atletico Madrid, turning it into private property. This kind of thing has happened frequently throughout history and across the world. Many club management teams have done this. But this also became a core weapon for political enemies to attack Hill. The reason why Hill was imprisoned this time was that, during his tenure as mayor of Marbella, he misappropriated government funds to sponsor Atletico Madrid's jersey front advertisement, with a total sponsorship fee of up to €30 million. Back when Atletico Madrid won the double, their shirt sponsor was Marbella. Coincidentally, the mayoral election in Marbella is currently underway. It's hard to say whether there's any connection between them. In European football, there are many examples like Hill. For example, there's Berlusconi of AC Milan, the Moratti family behind Inter Milan, and Florentino Perez, who is now preparing to run for president of Real Madrid. Behind all of these are various schemes. For them, the football club is more of a platform. As for whether sponsoring Atletico Madrid in the name of the city of Marbella is against regulations, that's a sensitive issue. Just like this time, one of the most important weapons that the old Gil and his son and Cerezo used to fight back against the trusteeship group was that in the 30th round of this season, when Atletico Madrid played Numancia away, the trusteeship group spent €140,000 of the club's money to mobilize 1,000 fans to go to the away game without the board's consent. In the 31st round of the league, the home team played against Athletic Bilbao. Without the board's approval, the tickets were offered as buy one get one free, which greatly dissatisfied the fans who had purchased season tickets. Most importantly, they lost both games. Enraged, the fans turned their anger directly to the government and the trusteeship. Over the years, Hill has been very willing to invest in player transfers. He has spent money to bring in any star player he has his eye on, such as Paul Futter, Vieri, Simeone, and Hasselbank. As for head coaches, world-class coaches such as Sachai, Antic, and Ranieri have taken turns coaching Atletico Madrid. This made him very popular with Atletico Madrid fans. It was this very advantage that allowed him to take over Atletico Madrid again at a crucial moment. But Atletico Madrid's current success is both due to Gil and his downfall. During his 13 years in charge of Atletico Madrid, he changed 23 head coaches and 5 interim head coaches, and bought 145 players. This has led to Atletico Madrid never having a stable season in recent years, lacking a complete team-building strategy. Which famous coach to hire and which star player to sign is basically decided by Gil based on his personal preferences. He wanted to emulate Real Madrid and Barcelona by playing attacking football, but he overlooked the fact that Atletico Madrid simply didn't have that kind of foundation or experience. Many people praise Atletico Madrid for winning the double in the 95-96 season, but few have noticed that in the 94-95 season, Atletico Madrid only finished 14th in La Liga, just one step away from the relegation zone. After winning the double, Atletico Madrid fell to 5th place in the league in the 96-97 season. In the 1997-98 season, Atletico Madrid finished 7th in the league, and their double-winning coach Antic was sacked. Last season, under the guidance of renowned Italian coach Arrigo Sacchi, the team nearly fell into the relegation zone. It was Antic's lightning-fast intervention in March that helped the team barely avoid relegation. After securing their place in the league, Antic was sacked, and Ranieri, the excellent coach who had managed Valencia, took over. Unexpectedly, Atletico Madrid fell directly into the relegation zone this season, and Antic once again came to the rescue midway through the season. On paper, Atletico Madrid has never lost and has no shortage of star players, even world-class ones. But on the pitch, Atletico Madrid's performance is like a roller coaster, always a heart-pounding experience. The Rojiblancos of recent years have been a black hole for both renowned coaches and star players. And all these problems undoubtedly point to Old Hill. If Atletico Madrid are relegated this season, you will be the number one culprit. Yang Hao said bluntly. You bastard. Old Hill flew into a rage, slamming his fist on his desk with all his might, and stood up abruptly, glaring at Yang Hao. It looked like it was about to devour someone. Please add this to your favorites, give it a recommendation, and keep reading. I'm begging for everything. Thank you so much. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Who is the number one? Even at 67, a ruthless man like Hill could still be incredibly powerful when enraged. Yang Hao, who was the first to be startled, was also taken aback, and Little Hill and Cerezo, who were sitting next to him, became nervous as well. Little Hill, in particular, was always ready to step in and dissuade Old Hill, fearing that Old Hill might fly into a rage and beat him. He has a history of such behavior. In March 1996, at the gates of the Spanish Football Federation, he had a heated argument with the general manager of Compostela FC and physically assaulted him, drawing heavy criticism from the Spanish media and fans. This move has severely damaged Atletico Madrid's image. Yang Hao was prepared, and smiled easily, asking calmly, "Did I say something wrong?" He met the piercing gaze of the enraged Old Hill head-on, refusing to yield an inch. Because he knew that Little Hill would stop him in time. Here, let me show you this set of data. As he spoke, Yang Hao took a document out of his briefcase, spread it on the desk, and pushed it toward Old Hill across from him. In his fury, Old Hill still grabbed it and looked at it. Yang Hao's document compiles all of Atletico Madrid's match data in La Liga over the past few years, including the number of goals scored and conceded, and provides a detailed analysis of the data for each season, as well as comparisons with other teams. The final conclusion is that Atletico Madrid's attack relies heavily on its superstars, but the problem isn't too serious. Their league performance always depends on the quality of their defense. For example, in the season they won the double, they scored 75 goals and conceded 32, making them the best defensive team in La Liga at the time. So far this season, after playing 32 rounds, they have already conceded 53 goals, making them the team with the worst defense in La Liga. Yang Hao's data not only included statistics on Atletico Madrid, but also on the performance of other teams in La Liga each season, especially the performance of the strong teams. Real Madrid and Barcelona have always had a strong attacking force, but their defenses have also always been quite good. Real Madrid has had European-level centre-backs like Hierro and Sanchez in recent years, and world-class defensive midfielders like Redondo anchoring the midfield. Barcelona also has excellent centre-backs like Nadal, De Boer, Ronald Koeman, and Abelardo, and Guardiola anchoring the midfield as well. But what about Atletico Madrid? Over the years, Atletico Madrid's team building has never followed any set pattern. Hill has invested heavily in players in the midfield and forward positions, from Paul Futter to Kiko, and then to Vieri and Hasselbank. He has never been stingy in bringing in attacking stars. But in the midfield and defense, we finally got Simeone, but after playing for 2 years and winning the double, he went to Inter Milan. Specifically for this season, the team's midfield is not lacking in talent. For example, Radek Bejber, a member of the Czech Republic's golden generation, is now the team's main defensive midfielder. And then there's Spanish midfielder Ruben Baraja, yes, the one who later transferred to Valencia and formed the strongest double pivot in Europe with Albelda. Now, at 25, he's a substitute. Pablo Garcia, the Uruguayan midfielder who later performed exceptionally well for Osasuna and transferred to Real Madrid, is now also at Atletico Madrid, but he has been relegated to the reserve team and has had 0 appearances for the first team this season. This is a very strange phenomenon. In Yang Hao's previous life, these players, after Atletico Madrid were relegated this season and transferred away from the team, all showed outstanding strength, including Vallerin, who had not played well for Atletico Madrid in the past 2 years, and Argentine winger Solari. Atletico Madrid's defense currently consists of Santi Denia, who is not in the Spanish national team, and 2 Paraguayan internationals, Carlos Gamarra and Sergio Ayala. Note that this Ayala is not the same Ayala from Argentina. These players all have one thing in common, they are all around 1.80 meters tall. In last night's 1-4 defeat to Deportivo La Coruña, centre-forward Roy Mackay scored a hat-trick. 2 weeks ago, in a 0-3 away defeat to Numancia, tall striker Jorge Delgado scored twice. In an era dominated by tall strikers, the height difference creates a significant disadvantage in physical duels, making Atletico Madrid's defense particularly vulnerable. And what about the midfield? From Ranieri to Antic, they all believed in the 4-4-2 formation. Although they sold the golden boy Jose Mari for a high price during the winter break, the team still has Dutch sharpshooter Hasselbank, Spanish Prince Kiko and Uruguayan Maradona Fernando Correa. The more difficult the situation for the team, the more it needs to rely on a key player like Kiko. Therefore, a 2 centre-forward formation became the standard. With 4 defenders and 2 centre-forwards, the only option is 4 midfielders. What about Vallerin, the traditional number 10 attacking midfielder? Therefore, he could only be paired with a partner, namely Babur. Players like Baraja and Pablo Garcia naturally lack playing opportunities. The ensuing problems are predictable. When Vallerin fails to provide sufficient protection in midfield, the defense is easily exposed to the opponent's firepower, compounded by the physical disadvantages of centre-backs. Atletico Madrid thus became the team with the worst defense in La Liga this season. If it weren't for the presence of Hasselbank, who is known for his scoring prowess, Atletico Madrid would have performed even worse this season. So far this season, Atletico Madrid have scored 41 goals in La Liga, with Hasselbank contributing 23 of them. He played in 7 out of 8 UEFA Cup matches, scoring 7 goals. There's also the King's Cup. This is also the only commendable thing Atletico Madrid has done this season, reaching the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey. Next Wednesday, Atletico Madrid will host Barcelona, led by Luis van Gaal, in the first leg of the Copa del Rey semi-final. The team's emphasis on offense over defense and player recruitment led to an imbalance between the two, resulting in serious problems that affected the team's performance this season. To make matters worse, Hill was imprisoned, causing widespread anxiety within the team. In this situation, if the team had a core member who could step up and stabilize morale, the problem wouldn't be so serious, such as Hierro for Real Madrid, or Nadal and Guardiola for Barcelona. But there is no such player at Atletico Madrid. Over the years, star players have come and gone like flowing water, severely weakening the influence of local players such as Kiko and Aguilera in the locker room. The frequent changes in head coaches have also led to an extremely loose locker room, lacking a core culture and cohesion. Under these circumstances, a financial crisis erupted, the entire management team resigned, the club was in a state of panic, and all the problems came to light like a volcanic eruption, causing the team's performance to collapse immediately. Yang Hao's data is very detailed, and he also very accurately pointed out Atletico Madrid's biggest problem at present. That's defense. This is completely different from what Antic said before. Antic previously said in an interview that Atletico Madrid's defense was not the problem, but their biggest problem was their attack. Old Hill patiently read through the materials Yang Hao handed him, then gave the young man a deep look before sitting down again, still coldly staring at Yang Hao. This caused Yang Hao and Xiao Xier to exchange a secret glance, both showing a hint of joy. There's hope. Perhaps your analysis is correct, but so what? Pointing out a problem and solving a problem are two different things. After a pause, Old Hill chuckled, compared to a rookie like you with no experience in coaching, why shouldn't I continue to give Antic a second chance? If Antic could solve these problems, why hasn't he won a single game in the last 6 league matches? These words clearly startled Old Hill. He had long been dissatisfied with Antic. After the team won the double, Antic failed to achieve satisfactory results for 2 consecutive seasons. When Sachai was replaced as manager, the performance was even worse, and Hill brought Antic back midway through the season. The head coach, who was unemployed and receiving his release clause from Atletico Madrid, had a simple request, a 1.5-year contract. Old Hill gave him the job, and the team avoided relegation, but last summer he let Antic leave with a 1-year contract compensation and brought in Ranieri. Who would have thought that Ranieri would do an even worse job than Sachai? When Hill lost control of the team, the trusteeship brought back Antic, who was still receiving a release clause from the club. This time, the Serbians are again demanding a 1.5-year contract. The whole incident caused a huge uproar among Atletico Madrid fans, who felt that Antic's request was excessive. Little Hill said that Old Hill even verbally abused Antic at home. From the perspective of a working-class person, Yang Hao felt that Antic's demands were perfectly reasonable. But Antic simply cannot reverse Atletico Madrid's current slump. I'm different from him. He has a contract. Even if the team is relegated this season, no one can blame him. He will get every penny he deserves. Yang Hao looked directly at Old Hill, getting straight to the heart of the matter. But I'm different. I've waited a long time and desperately need a coaching opportunity to prove my abilities, so I will go all out, even at the cost of everything. Old Hill stared intently at Yang Hao for a moment, then asked, "But what makes you qualified to coach Atletico Madrid? Just because you have a coaching certificate? Or because you studied sports management at the Cologne Sports Academy?" Yang Hao smiled nonchalantly, spread his hands, and sat down directly opposite Old Hill, meeting his gaze without any fear. "I can't prove that, you can only gamble. You know, our era is completely different from the past. Modern football emphasizes division of labor and cooperation. There are physical conditioning coaches, scouts to study opponents, tactical assistants, and training coaches to oversee it. The most important thing for the head coach right now is, here." Yang Hao pointed to his temple. Old Hill remained silent. He had to admit that the young man in front of him was very bold and had a lot of guts, daring to speak so eloquently in front of him. Florentino was absolutely right about that. If it were before he went to jail last year, he would definitely have kicked him out without hesitation. But this imprisonment, especially the turmoil of the past 3 months, has made him deeply aware of the problems at Atletico Madrid. Yang Hao's words cleared up this fog for him. This made him reflect for the first time on everything he had done for Atletico Madrid. Is this young man in front of me worth taking this gamble? And his own son. Old Hill turned to look at his nervous son, Hill. He knew his son too well and was well aware of what he and Cerezo were up to, but he didn't care. Because this is his son. Yang Hao, on the other hand, sat calmly, knowing that someone else was more anxious than him. That's Hill on the other side, and Cerezo, who always seems to be sitting on the sidelines. Since the assault incident in 1996, Gil has been the biggest obstacle to Atletico Madrid's development. Whether it's Cerezo, who followed Gil into Atletico Madrid's board of directors in 1987, or Gil Jr., who started serving as the club's general manager in 1992, if they want to become Atletico Madrid's #1 player, they have to remove the mountain above their heads first. Yang Hao knew about this, as did Little Hill and Cerezo, and Old Hill also knew. He is 67 years old. Please add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, Time is running out for Yang Hao. You really scared me to death just now. As Hill walked out of the meeting room, he felt a sense of relief, as if he had escaped a disaster. He had never seen his father, in such a fit of rage, manage to calm down and sit down to patiently listen to Yang Hao's explanation. In the past, there would probably have been bloodshed by now. My back is still wet, Little Hill said with a wry smile, still shaken. It's clear that he's also afraid of his father. This is not surprising, because the father and son are two different kinds of people, with two different personalities. How confident are you about this plan? Hill asked with concern. Yang Hao smiled. He had always thought that Chaussier was a good person, but he was still a bit inexperienced in doing things. His question is like asking customer service when buying something on Taobao, is your quality good? Only a fool would say it's bad. Yang Hao wasn't stupid, so he gave a very confident answer. My father has obviously been persuaded by you, but he needs to think it over further. I think it shouldn't be a big problem. Go back and wait for my good news. I'll try to persuade him again at noon, Little Hill said with a smile. Previously, everything at Atletico Madrid was decided by Gil, but this is the first time he has taken charge and insisted on his own ideas. Don't worry, I'll get back and start working on perfecting the plan right away. Hill trusted Yang Hao a lot. By the way, we don't have an assistant coach right now. Antic took over by himself. Is there anything you need? I can have someone prepare it. After Ranieri was sacked, he took his coaching staff with him, leaving only a goalkeeper coach, Jorge Perizarro. When Antic rushed to the rescue, he did not bring his own team, but instead used Atletico Madrid's coaching staff. This is mainly because it was too rushed. Now, Yang Hao is all alone. More importantly, he didn't even know how to train. In his previous life, he was a writer on QIDN.com, and his specialty was begging for votes, favorites, follow-up reading, and subscriptions. In short, he would roll around in the snow and ice 180 times to beg for everything. How do you train players? He's a complete novice. Help me choose an assistant coach who is a head coach type, and I need it quickly. Little Hill immediately understood what Yang Hao meant. Yang Hao definitely needs someone like this to take over Atletico Madrid. Coaching teams are generally not found casually, because they need to be familiar with and trust each other. This is different from hiring employees in a company. The latter can gradually adapt and integrate, but the coaching team must know each other well in order to cooperate seamlessly. Imagine if the coaching staff can't even coordinate, how can they expect the players to cooperate? Yang Hao's meaning is clear, he wants a head coach type assistant who can coach independently. This situation is also common in European football. For example, when Rijkaard was coaching Barcelona, didn't Barcelona find Ten Kate, a coach who had already achieved success in the Eredivisie, to be his assistant? Didn't Ferguson also delegate all the work to assistant coaches like Queiroz in the later stages of his tenure at Manchester United, while he himself was solely responsible for controlling the overall direction? Okay, I'll arrange it right away and come up with a candidate list as soon as possible, Little Hill agreed. It's April now, and the league is nearing its end. Finding a suitable assistant to a head coach is no easy task. It's especially difficult to be an assistant to a novice like Yang Hao. The most likely candidate is someone from the second team or youth team, since they know each other well. Alternatively, they could directly recruit from outside, which would be of interest to many head coaches who are currently unemployed and waiting for an opportunity. After all, if Yang Hao's coaching performance is poor and he is dismissed while serving as an assistant coach at Atletico Madrid, the assistant coach would be the first candidate to take his place, which would be a very good opportunity. Yang Hao wasn't worried about this at all, because Spain has a wealth of football talent, so there was nothing to fear. He was more worried about other things. Michel, you promised me you'd resolve the team's unpaid wages. Don't go back on your word, Yang Hao reminded him sternly. If a new leader doesn't offer any incentives to the locker room, how can he expect them to listen to him willingly? As a leader, there are two powers that cannot be relinquished, personnel and finance. Unpaid wages are not just a problem for Atletico Madrid, but a major issue for the entire Spanish football community. Whether we look back or forward, this problem has always existed. The players at Atletico Madrid are in a state of panic because the team is heavily in debt and can't pay their salaries. Don't worry, I'll do my best. Little Hill also looked serious. If he could have found the money, he wouldn't be in this predicament now. It's not just about trying our best, it's about certainty. Yang Hao emphasized again, many players have already contacted other teams. The morale in the locker room has completely collapsed. Regardless of whether we can avoid relegation this season, we can't keep these players. At that time, Atletico Madrid will inevitably face another wave of turmoil and restructuring. Of course, this was a golden opportunity for Yang Hao. As a time traveler, he could easily build a very strong lineup for Atletico Madrid. But the problem is, he needs to establish himself at Atletico Madrid first. At the very least, one must remain in the head coach position before being qualified to discuss anything else. I know what you're thinking. Atletico Madrid is a mess, and you want to get rid of it, right? Hill remained silent. He talked a lot with Yang Hao, and didn't even hide the fact that his thoughts were completely different from his father's. Old Hill has an emotional attachment to Atletico Madrid, and he wants to closely link the Hill family with Atletico, just like Inter Milan and the Maratti family, Juventus and the Agnelli family, AC Milan and the Berlusconi family, and so on. As a nouveau riche, this was the best way he could think of to climb into high society. But Hill Jr. felt that the Hill family simply couldn't afford the increasingly expensive professional football. Therefore, he wants to sell Atletico Madrid. Even Cerezo thought so. I must remind you, Michel, now is absolutely not the right time to sell Atletico Madrid cheaply. If you make a hasty decision, you will definitely regret it. But I can help you take Atletico Madrid to a higher level and produce the greatest return with the least investment. But now, you have to give me enough support to get through the current crisis. Yang Hao had said the same thing to Xiao Xier before. He believed, which is why Yang Hao is standing here today. Having said all that, Little Hill finally made up her mind, gritting her teeth and saying, "Don't worry, even if I have to sell everything I own and pay out of my own pocket, I will definitely help you." Yang Hao nodded with a smile. These were the words he had been waiting for. "By the way, Michelle." Before leaving, Yang Hao suddenly remembered something and turned back. "I want to say that if I really became the head coach of Atletico Madrid today, your father would have made the biggest gamble of his life, but he didn't bet on me." After saying that, Yang Hao waved and turned to leave. Hill was completely stunned. He has always had complex and conflicted feelings towards his father. On the one hand, he was terrified of his father, a fear that came from the depths of his soul. On the other hand, he looked down on his father, finding him irritable, vulgar, and ashamed of many of his actions and behaviors. There are many things his father never told him. He had even forgotten how long ago it was the last time the father and son sat down for a proper conversation. He always listened obediently and followed his father's arrangements, doing things in a very proper and law-abiding manner. Therefore, his father always scolded him for being indecisive and lacking his own opinions. But Yang Hao's sudden remark left him somewhat at a loss. Did his father really think that way? His intuition told him yes. But he couldn't believe it. The moment Yang Hao left the Calderon Stadium, his heart was filled with boundless pride. The fact that Old Hill is seriously considering it proves there's potential. The relationship between the Hill father and son is actually quite common, even in China. The first generation of entrepreneurs often finds it hard to stand the second generation, who were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. The second generation feels the same way about the first generation. Some of the bolder ones dare to rebel, while others are like Little Hill. But soon, his thoughts returned to Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid has many problems right now, but if you peel back the layers, you'll find that the team is still very strong. At least on paper, their strength is outstanding. Hasselbank is the core of the team's competitiveness. Solari, Beltran, Baraja, Capdevila, and Pablo Garcia are all renowned players who proved their strength in Yang Hao's previous life. Moreover, their ages are all between 22 and 27, with the youngest being Capdevila at only 22, yet he is already the starting left-back this season. What they lack is not ability, nor maturity, but opportunity. They have the opportunity to play at their best on the field. This requires a set of tactics that suit their performance. And the answer is already obvious. That is 4231. This tactic can maximize Valorant's abilities. In Yang Hao's previous life, after Valorant transferred to Deportivo La Coruña, the head coach Irurita used the 4-2-3-1 formation, which created the Super Deportivo that swept across European football. Valorant also thrived in this tactical system. After Baraja transferred to Valencia, his partnership with Albelda in the double-pivot midfield led to a Champions League runner-up finish and a La Liga title. And Hasselbank. This Dutch centre-forward is not tall, but he is very strong, fast and powerful, and has strong individual skills. However, he is not good at teamwork and is more adept at one-on-one play. Having him lead the attack and solely responsible for scoring goals would undoubtedly be very suitable. But this would create a big problem for Prince Kiko. Kiko suffered a serious Achilles tendon injury while playing for Barcelona last season and was sidelined for a long time. After recovering from the injury midway through this season, he has lost his form and has not scored a single goal so far. Yang Hao remembers clearly that even when Atletico Madrid was relegated to the Segunda División, Kiko's performance was not ideal, which led to the emergence of young player Torres. Therefore, securing kicks should not be a problem. The key point is that humans are emotional beings. The Atletico Madrid dressing room is now like a powder keg, ready to explode at any moment, even with the slightest spark. If they don't handle Kiko's situation well, they could stage a mutiny, and Yang Hao would be the first to lose his head. Even more critically, there are only 3 days left until the next match, the Copa del Rey semi-final at home against Barcelona. Time is running out for Yang Hao. Please add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 5, starting with coaching Atletico Madrid. After returning to his apartment from the Calderon Stadium, Yang Hao shut himself in and began studying Atletico Madrid. Coaching a team is far more complex than writing a novel, there is a great deal of preparation work involved. Before noon, Hill called him. It's done. After Yang Hao left, Atletico Madrid's three key figures held a private meeting and finalized the matter. Yang, I'm entrusting everything about the team to you from now on, Hill said sincerely over the phone. Both father and son placed heavy bets on this high-stakes gamble. By firing Antic, Atletico Madrid will have to pay a large sum in compensation. But that's not the point. The key issue is that Yang Hao has absolutely no coaching experience, everything he does is based on talk. Whether he can control the team is a very worrying question. More importantly, Atletico Madrid is currently in a precarious situation. If the news gets out that they are sacking the renowned coach Antic and hiring a 25-year-old rookie with no coaching experience as head coach, are they sure they are not joking? By then, the father and son will surely become a laughingstock in all of Spain, no, in the whole world. The fact that Hill said such things on the phone proves that he wasn't entirely without concerns about Yang Hao. Michelle, don't worry, I promise you'll be proud of the decision you made today, believe me. On the other end of the phone, Hill agreed and mentioned that he had already asked someone to look for a suitable assistant, and that he had also made a call to Fernando Zambrano, the head coach of Atletico Madrid's reserve team. This 50-year-old Spanish coach previously managed Rayo Vallecano, but his experience at Atletico Madrid is somewhat similar to that of Antic. He took over as a substitute for Atletico Madrid's reserve team in March 1999, with his contract ending at the end of last season. As a result, head coach Carlos Agias had a poor season and was dismissed in November 1999, so Atletico Madrid brought back Zambrano. According to what Hill told him, Zambrano wasn't very interested in becoming the first team's assistant coach. He even strongly opposed a rookie like Yang Hao taking over the team, believing it to be a crazy decision. Yang Hao was not surprised by this. In his memory, Antic did not finish coaching this season. After being sacked, he was succeeded by Zambrano. In other words, Yang Hao stole the coaching opportunity that should have belonged to Zambrano. The Spanish coach was certainly not happy about it. Of course, taking over Atletico Madrid was also the pinnacle of Zambrano's coaching career. It's alright, let's look again, Yang Hao said with a smile. Yang Hao always gave Gil a very calm and composed impression, which reassured the Atletico Madrid heir somewhat. After the two parties made the appointment, Yang Hao returned to Calderón Stadium in the afternoon to sign the contract. Atletico Madrid will also officially announce this appointment. After hanging up the phone, Yang Hao wasn't as excited as he had imagined. On the contrary, he was quite calm. The real test has only just begun, he carries a heavy burden on his shoulders. As a time traveler, the current European football scene is full of talent for him. For example, Ruud van Nistelrooy is still recovering from injury at PSV Eindhoven, and Ronaldinho is still waiting for his ticket to Europe at Grêmio. There's also Eto'o, who was loaned by Real Madrid to play for Real Mallorca. Interestingly, before Yang Hao traveled through time, he happened to see that after Eto'o retired, he became the president of the Cameroonian Football Federation and was suspected of manipulating matches, which caused an uproar among fans all over the world. Who would have thought that, in the blink of an eye, Eto'o was just a promising young man? The next 20 years will be the golden age of European football, a time of abundant talent and the rise of superstars like Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Yang Hao was full of anticipation and ambition, wanting to write his own glorious chapter in this best of times, so as not to let down his journey through time. His stint as manager of Atletico Madrid is his first chapter, and he must do it well no matter what. Time is money. Yang Hao returned to Calderón Stadium right after lunch break. Unlike last time, his identity has now changed. He is the new head coach of Atletico Madrid. Hill personally came to the front desk to greet him and led him into the conference room from that morning. Unlike the morning when only Hill, his son, and Cerezo were present, there were several more people in the meeting room in the afternoon. Sitting next to Gil Sr. and Gil Jr. is club legend Paulo Futre, a 34-year-old Portuguese player who was Atletico Madrid's first superstar player and retired in Japan in January 1999. Not long ago, he was involved in transfer rumors involving Real Madrid presidential candidate Florentino Perez and Figo. Some say that he helped agent José Vega meet with Florentino. This club legend has been quite active in Madrid lately. In Yang Hao's previous life, Paulo Futre took over as Atletico Madrid's sporting director in November of this year. It seems we need to move it forward now. Paul Futre was clearly closer to the Hills, and when he saw Yang Hao, he smiled and nodded in a friendly manner. Sitting next to Cerezo was Clemente Balavide, a member of the club's board of directors. He had played for Atletico Madrid for many years, but was ousted from the team in 1987 after Gil took over. After the club was privatized in 1992, he joined the club's management team as a board member and has served in that position ever since. After the assault on Sir Alex Ferguson in 1996, he essentially became the club's representative, attending almost all meetings and draw ceremonies of the Spanish Football Federation and UEFA. In addition to the club's management, two players were also present, team captain Tony Muñoz and vice-captain Juan Carlos Aguilera. Tony Muñoz, a left-back, has lost his place this season and has been replaced by the younger Capdevila. The 32-year-old is also approaching the twilight of his career. Also a veteran, 31-year-old Aguilera is still going strong, and this season he has played more as the team's right winger. This also reflects Atletico Madrid's current lack of talent on the right flank. The meeting began as soon as Yang Hao arrived. Gil first announced Yang Hao's appointment, stating that the club had reached an agreement with Antic, who would no longer serve as Atletico Madrid's head coach, and that Yang Hao would lead the team for the remainder of the season. The team is now at a very critical and extraordinary time. We need to make some extraordinary decisions and use extraordinary people. He'll use this to explain the reasons behind the senior management's appointment. But clearly, this is not convincing at all. Not only did the captain and vice-captain frown, but even Balavich shook his head. This appointment was both unexpected and baffling to them. Antic's dismissal is nothing unusual. Everyone in Madrid knows that, like the vast majority of Atletico Madrid fans, Gil dislikes Antic intensely. Despite Antic having led the team to a double title. But after firing Antic, they actually hired a 25-year-old Chinese man with no coaching experience. Isn't that a joke? Do you really think managing a team is just child's play? However, the entire club belongs to the Hill family and Cerezo, and as long as they don't object, nothing anyone else says matters. Of course, once the news got out, Atletico Madrid fans were bound to protest. And there will be serious protests. It is precisely because of this concern that Atletico Madrid's management hopes to handle this managerial change discreetly. Yang Hao sat in his seat and observed the reactions of everyone present, all of which were within his expectations. It's normal to object, it would be strange not to object. In addition to appointing Yang Hao as head coach, Paul Futer will also serve as the team's sporting director. This is also in response to what Yang Hao said before. Atletico Madrid has been assembling its team without any method or mature strategy over the years, relying purely on intuition, which is definitely not going to work. Therefore, they chose to appoint a sports director. Paul Futer, as a former superstar player, still has a lot of connections in European football. For example, the Portuguese agent he befriended, José Veiga, was a notorious bigwig. Almost everyone from Portugal who went abroad to play football had to go through José Veiga's hands. Even Jorge Mendes, who will dominate European football in the coming years, is currently working under José Veiga, which shows just how famous José Veiga is now. Currently, Hugo Leal in Atletico Madrid is a player for José Veiga. In the coming years, the Portuguese league will be a treasure trove of talent. Paul Futre was appointed hastily. From receiving the call from Old Hill until now, he has only made his decision in a few hours. It is certainly impossible for him to come up with a complete plan. So, after repeating himself to Yang Hao for a few minutes, Futre threw the thorny issue at him. This can be considered Yang Hao's first test. He must fully explain his upcoming coaching plan at today's meeting, in front of everyone. The most pressing issue is how to avoid relegation. I've calculated it. If we want to avoid relegation in La Liga this season, we need at least 44 to 46 points. Yang Hao first gave a general overview of Atletico Madrid's current situation and the relegation battle in La Liga. But we only have 32 points now, which means we need to get 12 points in the remaining 6 league matches to have a chance of staying in the league. Everyone present knew that Atletico Madrid's chances of avoiding relegation this season were extremely slim. Now, Yang Hao's words undoubtedly further confirm this point. Even with 6 wins out of 6 league matches, you'd only have 18 points. To get 12 points, you need to win at least 4 more games. Is it difficult? It's difficult, extremely difficult. Even for top teams, winning 4 out of 6 games is extremely difficult. Note that this is La Liga in 2000. The strength of all the teams is still very close. In the coming years, with the surge of globalization, Real Madrid and Barcelona took advantage of this trend, their revenues soared at an extremely rapid pace, and they recruited more and more star players, resulting in a leap forward in their overall strength, which finally widened the gap in strength between them and other teams. But the era of the Spanish Super League has not yet arrived. Given the current strength of Real Madrid and Barcelona, it would be difficult for them to win 4 out of 6 La Liga matches. Moreover, this is Atletico Madrid, who have gone 10 rounds without a win. The mattress maker's last victory was in January, 3 months ago. If Atletico Madrid had that kind of ability, would they still be stuck in the relegation zone? Therefore, as soon as Yang Hao finished speaking, someone immediately spoke up to refute him. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 6: A Glimmer of Hope. That doesn't seem right. Clement Balavide was the first to raise an objection. Mr. Yang, you don't seem to be very familiar with La Liga. Even in the 2 seasons with 22 teams, it was generally enough to stay in the league with around 40 points. Did you make a mistake in your calculation? Everyone present immediately turned to look at Yang Hao, especially Little Hill, who looked somewhat nervous. If you can even get this wrong, how can you be convincing? Yang Hao smiled and nodded, yes, that's right. Last season, we only needed 37 points to avoid relegation. Then why did you say you wanted 44 to 46 points? Clement beraved himself was a little surprised. Yang Hao calmly replied, after 32 rounds last season, Extremadura, ranked 18th, had 31 points, while Villarreal, ranked 17th, had 32 points. So far this season, after 32 rounds of the league, Oviedo, ranked 18th, has 34 points, while Real Betis, ranked 17th, has 36 points, a full 3 to 4 points more than before. But please don't forget, there are still 20 teams. Last season there were 4 relegation spots, and this season there are 3. In the mid-1990s, La Liga underwent a reform. In the 1995-96 and 1996-97 seasons, the league had 22 teams, but in the 1997-98 season, it returned to 20 teams. This has led to changes in the team's promotion and relegation spots. Before the 98-99 season, La Liga had 4 relegation spots, but this season it has returned to 3. This changes the overall environment for avoiding relegation. Last season, Alaves earned 40 points, which allowed them to finish 16th and avoid relegation. However, the situation is even more dire this season. If the 17th place team doesn't get 44 points, it's estimated that they will have a hard time avoiding relegation. There aren't really any secrets behind this, it's just that people don't usually pay much attention to the points gap and past comparisons, and mostly just have a vague impression. That's why Clement Balavide made such a rebuttal. After Yang Hao explained it this way, everyone immediately understood. After 32 rounds, teams in the same position have significantly more points this season than last season, by 3 or 4 points. Another reason is that the top teams don't have as many points as they did last season. For example, after 32 rounds last season, league leaders Barcelona had 66 points, but this season's league leaders Deportivo La Coruña only have 61 points. Real Madrid, who finished 4th after 32 rounds last season with 56 points, are also 4th at the same stage this season with only 53 points. The reason why top teams have fewer points is because they have been targeted and lost more points. This means that mid to lower ranked teams have gained more points, making the league more competitive and the situation more chaotic. Therefore, Yang Hao was right, to avoid relegation, at least 44 points are needed. Hill glanced around at everyone and found them all speechless. He was delighted and looked at Yang Hao with even more confidence. He had always trusted Yang Hao's analysis and eloquence. But Yang Hao paid no attention to these things and continued with his analysis. In the next 6 league matches, we will play Malaga at home, Valencia away, Barcelona at home, Oviedo away, Sevilla at home, and Real Mallorca away. In these 6 matches, Oviedo and Sevilla are our direct rivals in the fight to avoid relegation. Sevilla, a newly promoted team, is already relegated. If we want to stay in the league, we must bring down Oviedo. We absolutely cannot repeat the mistakes we made in round 27 in these two matches. In the 27th round, Atletico Madrid will host Real Betis, which will be Antique's first match as Atletico Madrid's coach. At the time, Atletico Madrid was ranked 17th and Real Betis was ranked 16th. It was a relegation battle between two famous coaches, Antic and Hiddink, but Atletico Madrid failed to defeat Real Betis at home. Playing at home against a direct relegation rival, failing to secure 3 points was a complete defeat for Atletico Madrid. Staying in the league is like a life-or-death war. If you want to survive, you have to crush everyone else. Of the remaining 4 opponents, Malaga is currently ranked 11th, Valencia is ranked 5th, Barcelona is ranked 2nd, and Van Gaal's team is still making a final push for the league title. Barcelona are only 5 points behind league leaders Deportivo La Coruña, so they still have a chance. Finally, there's Real Mallorca, currently ranked 8th. It can be said that Atletico Madrid faces an extremely perilous situation ahead, with a sheer cliff looming behind them. This is actually the reason why Clement Balavide and others opposed changing the coach. Antic is a renowned coach with extensive experience. In such a challenging situation, it's absurd to use a 25-year-old rookie instead of him. Yang Hao had studied this part of Atletico Madrid's history in his previous life. Antic's team suffered a crushing defeat, failing to win a single game from round 33 to round 37. They even suffered a humiliating home defeat to Barcelona and an away defeat to Valencia, resulting in their relegation 2 rounds early. Interestingly, after being certain of relegation, Antic was dismissed. In the last round of the league after the change of coach, they actually defeated Real Mallorca away from home. The coach at that time was Zambrano, the reserve team coach who had just refused to assist Yang Hao. Of course, this can also be interpreted as a consolation prize from Real Mallorca to Atletico Madrid at the time, when Real Mallorca had nothing to play for. But now that he's here and has become Atletico Madrid's head coach, he will never let the tragedy repeat itself. What I want to say is that every game from now on is a decisive battle for us, and it will determine whether we can stay in La Liga next season. When Yang Hao finished speaking, he looked around at everyone with a solemn expression. I know that many people don't believe in me, which is normal. But what I want to say is that whether you accept it or not, I am now the head coach of Atletico Madrid, and that is an unchangeable fact. So let's put aside all doubts and prejudices for now, work together, and play well in every game from now on. I will prove my strength and value with the team's performance in the future. After Yang Hao, Old Hill also said a few words, basically meaning that he supported Yang Hao. At the same time, he also asked everyone in the club to support Yang Hao. This is a decision made by management, and everyone must obey. Old Hill has a very high reputation at the club, and since he said so, the matter is settled. After the meeting, Yang Hao borrowed a small meeting room from the club and, accompanied by Hill and Paul Futer, met with Tony Muñoz and Aguilera to learn about the current situation in the team's locker room. The situation is very bad. Unpaid wages are one issue, but the main problem is that the team has been in such a chaotic state recently that everyone has lost confidence. Many people have already contacted teams in advance. For example, Solari's brother-in-law, Redondo, plays for their city rivals Real Madrid, and he has decided to transfer to Real Madrid at the end of this season. This Argentine winger is quite capable. In Yang Hao's previous life, he also secured a place in Real Madrid, a team full of star players. He probably never imagined that he would be going to his brother-in-law's house, only to find that as soon as he arrived, Redondo was sold to AC Milan by Florentino, and the Argentine midfield king's career was over. This summer, Real Madrid signed 3 top La Liga defensive midfielders in one go, Makelele, Flavio, and Celades. In the end, only Makelele succeeded. The same applies to Hasselbank. His agent has been actively lobbying for him, and he is likely to return to the Premier League, but PSV Eindhoven is also reportedly interested in him. PSI is overthinking it. Even if we get relegated, they can't afford Hasselbank, Hill said fiercely. As long as the player is still under contract and there is no relegation release clause in the contract, there is no such thing as a cheap fire sale. Right now, everyone's mind is no longer on training and matches. They have lost confidence in this season and are only thinking about escaping as soon as possible. They are unwilling to follow the team to play in the Segunda División, including many local players. Tony Muñoz said this with a look of deep sorrow on his face. He was a key player in the team's double championship victory, a time when Atletico Madrid was riding high. Who would have thought that the bedsheet army would now be reduced to a lower rank? If Yang Hao remembered correctly, in his previous life, after Atletico Madrid was relegated, only the two captains in front of him and a very few other players like Kiko were willing to stay and follow the team to compete in the Segunda División. But after Kiko's serious injury, his form was gone and he couldn't get it back. Tony Muñoz is also getting old, and his performance has declined significantly. In 2000, it was generally difficult for professional players over 30 to maintain their form. After all, the current level of scientific training is still relatively backward, far from being as advanced as it will be in 10 or 20 years. The only one I can still rely on is Aguilera. Yang Hao was helpless. All he could do now was hope that the two captains would play a role in the locker room, actively urging the players to regain their fighting spirit and strive to deliver their best performance in the final 6 games and the Copa del Rey on Wednesday. Tony Muñoz and Aguilera were both quite surprised to hear this. With the relegation situation already so dire, do they really want to play in the Copa del Rey? Keep in mind that their opponent in the Copa del Rey is Barcelona. Van Gaal's Barcelona. The team currently ranked second in La Liga. Are you sure you want to go all out against Barcelona at this time? Yang Hao gave a very decisive and unquestionable answer. Yes, we not only need to give it our all, but we also need to win this game. Why? Tony Muñoz was puzzled. Yang Hao smiled confidently at his captain, because we need confidence. A simple sentence left everyone stunned. Confidence. At times like these, confidence is more precious than gold for a team like Atletico Madrid. Even Antic is tanking, he has no way to deal with the team anymore. But in the world of football, confidence isn't something that comes easily, nor can it be gained by simply shouting a few slogans or getting a pep talk. Players and teams need to gain confidence through matches and victories. If they give up the Copa del Rey semi-final in order to avoid relegation, then they won't need to play the remaining 6 league matches. When the team was eliminated from the Copa del Rey, their chances of avoiding relegation were already slim. Therefore, we must not only play this game, but we absolutely must win it. The current situation is extremely difficult and dire, but the more difficult it is, the more I need your help and support. Yang Hao looked at the two captains and said sincerely. Only by working together can we have a chance to fight our way out and create a glimmer of hope. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, Top Talents You Must Recruit at the Start. One detail clearly demonstrates Hill's support for Yang Hao. When Yang Hao finished his meeting with the two captains and arranged to go to the training base in Majadahonda, a northwestern suburb of Madrid, not only did the newly appointed sporting director Paulo Futre accompany them, but Little Hill also wanted to go along. Paulo Futre is very familiar with Atletico Madrid, and having just retired, he is still very respected in the team. There is no need for Gil to be there. Only for a rookie like Yang Hao would it be necessary to use Atletico Madrid's crown prince to support him. Yang Hao was well aware of this and gave Xiao Sierra a grateful look. Today you treat me with your confidant, tomorrow I will surely dedicate myself to you, give you my all. Starting from Calderon Stadium, head north on the M30 highway, then turn west onto the A6 highway, passing through a cluster of upscale villa communities. Is this the La Finca neighborhood? Once on the A6 highway, Yang Hao, sitting in the back seat, could see that the residential area was still under construction. Yes, Florentino's real estate company is also involved, Paul Fortre replied from the passenger seat. The Portuguese were quite puzzled as to why Yang Hao suddenly brought this up. Little did he know that the name Rafinha would become a household name for countless Chinese football fans after 2010. Cristiano Ronaldo, Kaká, Gareth Bale, Benzema. These superstars all live in this neighborhood. Zidane, Raúl, Casillas, and others originally lived in the city center, but later moved here as well. Oh, right, and Torres too. How is Torres performing in our youth team? Yang Hao suddenly asked. If he remembered correctly, Torres had spent a long time recovering from a fracture before joining the first team, but he wasn't sure exactly when it happened, only that it was around this year. You've heard of this kid too? Hill asked with a smile as he drove. Yang Hao nodded. I've watched him play, and I believe he can become the best center forward in the world in the future. The premise is that we need to create a suitable offensive tactic for him to help him play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. His words surprised both Hill Jr. and Paul Fortre, but they were also very pleased. Torres is the best performing player in Atletico Madrid's youth academy and is highly anticipated by many. He's doing well now, but he's a bit young, just turned 16, and is currently in the U17 youth team. Paul Fortre knew it all by heart. After saying that, the Portuguese added, "Our training base has very limited space. Only those aged 17 and above train here. The rest are distributed among various partner youth training clubs. So Gabi and Antonio Lopez should both be here, right?" Yang Hao asked again. Paul Fortre was surprised, but quickly laughed. "It seems you've really put in a lot of effort." He was beginning to understand why Little Hill valued Yang Hao so much. Gabi in U17 and Antonio Lopez in U19 are the best performers in our youth team. In addition, Manu Del Moral, Diego Rivas and Nuno Rivas, as well as Giri Rosicky are all good players in the youth team. Yang Hao nodded indifferently, he wasn't particularly interested in the other players. Giri Rosicky is quite interesting. He shares the same name as his father, but he has a younger brother named Tomas Rosicky who currently plays for Sparta Prague in the Czech Republic. What's interesting is that, from childhood to adulthood, Giorgio Rosicky was more talented and performed better than Tomas Rosicky, which is why Giorgio Rosicky was able to join the then glorious Atletico Madrid in 1996. But who could have imagined that, a few years later, while the older brother was still wasting his time in Atletico Madrid's youth academy, the younger brother had already become a household name in China. Often, choice is more important than ability. After passing through the area of Rafinha, we turned south onto the M40 and entered the area of Majadahonda. Like La Finca, this area is full of upscale residences. Atletico Madrid's training ground is surrounded by a residential area of detached villas. The plot of land is rectangular, with a width equal to the width of 2 standard football fields side by side, and a length equal to the length of 3 football fields joined together. But at the southernmost point there is only a standard stadium with simple stands, which is the youth team's match field, and the open space next to it is the team's training building and parking lot. The facilities are quite basic, which is the general situation in European football today. Everyone is struggling to make ends meet, so where would they get the money to invest in these hardware facilities? After getting off the car, the group went straight to the coach's office in the training building. Antic's 3 visits to the palace were all brief, both in terms of arrival and departure. The first team's coaching staff had already received the news, and when they saw Hill and Paul Futer accompanying Yang Hao, they were even more certain that the rumors were true. Immediately, the entire office erupted in discussion, with everyone feeling that the club's decision was far too frivolous. Is giving up on a team by appointing a 25-year-old rookie as head coach? After Yang Hao entered the room, he kept an eye on everyone's reactions, which was quite interesting. For example, the white-haired old man in his 50s should be George Perizarro. He only stayed until the end of the season, so he seemed indifferent to Atletico Madrid's hiring of Yang Hao. This Italian goalkeeping coach is no ordinary player. He has served as an assistant to Lippi, Bianchi, and Ranieri, and has worked for teams such as Napoli, Juventus, Fiorentina, and Valencia. His resume is quite impressive. He has also trained many world-class goalkeepers, such as Buffon, Toldo, and Canizares. At least, players who have played Football Manager will definitely be familiar with it. But what truly excited Yang Hao was his apprentice standing next to Perizarro. Pedro Harlow. Veteran FM players will certainly be familiar with him, as he was considered a top coach in the Classic FM 2006, and in subsequent games he was a top talent with a goalkeeper training level of 20, a must recruit at the start of a new game. Pedro Harlow, 37, retired last summer and is currently preparing for his coaching certification exam. It was precisely because Pedro Harlow did not yet have a coaching certificate that the club kept Perizarro after firing Ranieri, since a certificate is required for official matches. Yang Hao secretly made a mental note of Pedro Harlow, determined not to let him go to their arch-rival Real Madrid again. But he remained outwardly calm and shook hands with everyone one by one. The biggest difference between European football now and in the next few years is that the division of labor is not as detailed. The most typical example is the coaching staff configuration. The large coaching teams of the past, often consisting of a dozen or even 20 or 30 people, are now virtually non-existent. 3 to 5 coaching staff members, along with some other staff, constitute the basic coaching staff for the entire first team. Among the club's staff, there was also a physiotherapist who caught Yang Hao's attention. Because he was very young, only 20 years old, his name was José Carlos García Palalés. Upon hearing the name, Yang Hao immediately remembered it and wrote it down. Why? In Yang Hao's previous life, this person was poached by Real Madrid in 2012, and his figure could be seen in the celebration photos of every Real Madrid championship afterwards. The role of a physiotherapist is actually very important. They not only travel with the team to competitions and are responsible for treatment during matches, but they also serve as a communication bridge between the locker room, coaching staff, and medical team, and are responsible for developing players' rehabilitation plans. At their first meeting, Yang Hao's assistant hadn't arrived yet, so he wasn't involved in many things, allowing the team to continue according to the original plan. This made everyone even more disappointed in him. Many people thought that someone so young who could convince Atletico Madrid's management must have some impressive credentials, but it turns out there was nothing of substance. But Yang Hao still made his own demands. Torres, Gabi, Pablo Garcia, and Antonio Lopez from the youth team were called up to the first team and began training with the first team in the afternoon. I need to observe their performance. As soon as he finished speaking, a staff member immediately took a note of it. Yang Hao also made a special effort to find out about Kiko's recovery, because Atletico Madrid's prince had not performed well after returning from injury. The answer he received was from the young Palalés. Kiko's injury is not optimistic, and his recovery is not going well. Palalés said that he and the team doctors have done their best, but it will take longer for him to regain his form. As for the team's current injury situation, there's actually not a big problem. Professional athletes, who doesn't have some injuries? As long as it doesn't affect the game, it's fine. They were all young people, but 20-year-old Palalés was more accepting of Yang Hao than the others. Seeing that he was very familiar with the team's situation and the players' physical condition, and that young people were easier to manage, Yang Hao simply took him under his wing. After leaving the coach's office, Yang Hao didn't even glance at his own office, heading straight to the players' rest area. Long before them, both captains had already returned to the training base and told their teammates what had happened in Calderon, also revealing that Yang Hao would be coming soon. However, the players' reactions to this were mostly negative. Whether it's Ranieri or Antic, they are at least well-known coaches in European football. But who is Yang Hao? Which rock did it spring out of? What makes him qualified to coach Atletico Madrid? Because they were emotionally charged, the players ignored Yang Hao and his group when they walked in. They only perked up a little when they saw Little Hill and Futer appear at the same time as Yang Hao. The fact that the general manager and Futer appeared together carries far more weight than the previous treatment of Ranieri and Antic. Of course, when Antic took office, he was brought along by Blanco, the head of the trusteeship group. Yang Hao was not surprised at all by the players' attitude. It would be a miracle if they acted overly enthusiastic. But what needs to be said still needs to be said, and the appropriate attitude still needs to be shown. Yang Hao confidently told everyone that he would lead Atletico Madrid to fight for every single game. But he figured that probably no one would believe him. He also called on everyone to cheer up, work together, and help the team overcome the difficulties, but the players showed little interest. These people are all shrewd, they won't be easily fooled by a few words. Left with no other option, Yang Hao had to resort to his trump card. A typhoon has made landfall. Hoping everything is alright. Please recommend, vote, favorite, and follow this story. End of this chapter. Chapter 8 Coach, you're not trying to fool me, are you? The issue of unpaid wages in La Liga has a long history. Even elite teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona have various problems such as unpaid salaries, bonuses, and appearance fees. Some teams are so outrageous that after the season ends, they settle accounts and give the team a blank IOU. Money? No. Yang Hao knew that if Florentino hadn't sold the Real Madrid training center to the government after taking office, in exchange for a large sum of startup capital, whether or not they would have been able to have a Galacticos team in the future would still be an unknown. This belongs to the Bernabeu's legacy. Unfortunately, Atletico Madrid's training ground is located in the remote Majadahonda. With over €70 million in debt, plus unpaid wages owed to the team, Atletico Madrid's financial situation is in dire straits. The moment Yang Hao brought this up, the players' anger erupted completely. The star players, who were initially reluctant to talk to the rookie head coach, are now full of complaints. One person said they were owed several months' salary by the team, another said they had elderly parents and young children to support, and yet another demanded that Yang Hao give a definite answer as to when the club would clear the back pay. The most awkward person here is Hill, because he is the general manager. The entire club belongs to their family, so the players are essentially demanding their unpaid wages in person. If Hill were still alive, the players probably wouldn't have dared to be so blatant, but young Hill is a good person. Paul Fortre, standing to the side, saw Hill being harassed by the players, and then looked at Yang Hao, who always had a smile on his face, and couldn't help but sigh. Once a person finds someone agreeable, they'll think everything that person does makes sense. He couldn't even understand why Gil could think Yang Hao could save Atletico Madrid. She was sold out by him, yet she willingly helped him count the money. Okay, now that I've gotten myself into this mess, how am I going to clean it up? If Atletico Madrid had money, would the trusteeship have risked the fans' backlash to sell Jose Mari, a player beloved by the fans? It's better not to mention selling players. The players' resentment only intensifies when the topic of selling players comes up. They promised to give us money if we sold the person, but where did the money go after the person was sold? Yang Hao, being a straightforward man, directly joined the players in cursing the group of bastards in the trusteeship team, saying that they were untrustworthy and should never have cheated the players out of their hard-earned money. Surprisingly, this led him to have a few words with the players about something they shared. Paul Fortre was also dumbfounded. With such eloquence, it's no wonder that little Hill confides in him. However, Yang Hao knew when to stop. The time was right, and he changed the subject. The trusteeship did a really bad job in the past, but now they've washed their hands of it. Mr. Hill has just taken over the team and is still sorting out the accounts and tracing where the funds went, but this will take some time, and everyone should be understanding. Yang Hao's words calmed the players' resentment towards Hill. But everyone's business is the club's business. We see everyone's difficulties, so the club will not stand idly by. Mr. Hill has already promised me that past debts will be put aside for the time being. The team guarantees that once the accounts are cleared up, we will not owe you a single penny. We hope everyone will be patient. But before that, our competition must continue. Everyone knows how precarious our situation is. If we are relegated, the club's revenue will be further affected, and we will be even less able to pay salaries. Yang Hao paused deliberately at this point, looked at the players in front of him, and found that they had all quieted down and were listening to him. Clearly, they are all very concerned about money. Of course, everyone needs to go out and fight for the club, so we can't let them go hungry. Therefore, Mr. Hill has decided that from now on, even if he has to sell everything he owns, he will never owe anyone a single penny more. All salaries, appearance fees, and bonuses will be paid out immediately after the match. He will never break his promise. The players were immediately in an uproar. Is this real or fake? No more arrears. No one could believe it, and they all turned to look at Little Hill. Having been pestered by the players and finding himself with no other option, Hill felt reassured by their concern, especially after hearing Yang Hao's words. The head coach is right. We will definitely pay everyone back for the past once we have sorted it out. But from now on, we will use the games as the benchmark. After each game, we will immediately pay salaries, appearance fees and bonuses. I assure everyone, I will not break my promise this time. Yang Hao was a new official, so his guarantees didn't carry much weight. But Hill's guarantees were different. The players believed what he said to some extent. More importantly, there are only 3 days left until the next match. Their contracts are all in Atletico Madrid's hands, the season is not over yet, and transfers are impossible. Waiting 3 more days won't hurt. This money must be paid 3 days from now, before the home game against Barcelona. Leaving the players' rest area, Yang Hao, Hill, and Paul Futer walked side by side. Yang Hao put it simply, in front of the players, Hill had no choice but to agree, but the reality was, where could they find the money? Let's get a bank loan, mortgage the players' contracts to the bank, and try to get a portion of it out first, Yang Hao suggested. Spanish banks don't offer this kind of service, and I doubt even British banks do. When it comes to the financial industry, Britain is definitely the one that does it best. If all else fails, we'll sell the player, sign a contract first, and have the other party make an advance payment. After a pause, Yang Hao looked at Gil with great certainty and said, Michel, believe me, as long as we get through this difficult time, I promise to give you a strong Atletico Madrid team. Yang Hao spoke with exceptional confidence. Even Paul Fortray, who was standing next to him, was puzzled. Who gave him the courage to make such a promise? You're overthinking it. These days, transfers between clubs are often on credit, Paul Futer said. What? There are many teams outside that are even poorer than us. Yang Hao said he was speechless. Do you guys play this recklessly in European football too? Think about it, why do Bundesliga teams always like to sell players to Bayern Munich? And why do La Liga teams always like to sell to Real Madrid and Barcelona? Paul Futer asked. Before Yang Hao could answer, he gave the answer himself. Because it is easier to handle debt disputes between countries. Jose Mari and Shamet. Hill shook his head. Actually, we only received the first phase of funding, which wasn't much, and it didn't even cover the players. But Yang Hao had discussed this matter with him several times before, and he had made a promise. So, after a pause, Little Hill looked at Yang Hao again. Don't worry, I will definitely keep my promise to you. I'll figure out the money issue. It will be resolved before the match against Barcelona. Yang Hao nodded and hummed in agreement, still somewhat believing what Chaussier had said. Atletico Madrid may indeed be short of money, but is the Hill family also short of money? Don't be ridiculous, who would believe that? Throughout history and across the world, which boss hasn't said they're dirt poor? Are there few examples of companies going bankrupt while the owners make a fortune? The key is whether the boss is willing to pay out of his own pocket. Hill Jr. and Paul Fortray have both left. The club has just gone through a period of turmoil, and they still have a lot to do. Yang Hao stayed at the Mahatahunga training base and asked Paralesh to go to the players' rest area and call Vailron over. He then toured his own office. The layout is quite simple, just a desk, sofa, TV, and the like. Unfortunately, there wasn't a single computer on the desk. For older people like Rainieri and Antic, computers were too advanced a high-tech gadget. I'll have to get the club to provide one sometime. I can play StarCraft or Warcraft, or even Football Manager, when I have some free time. Oh, right, this should be the era of Champions Manager. Sitting in his office chair, Yang Hao suddenly thought of Antic. I wonder if he was sitting here when he received the call at noon that get out of class was over. In any case, we must not repeat the mistakes of Rainieri and Antic. To stay in this position, one must stabilize the locker room. The players' overall morale is now barely stable. As long as Gil can fulfill his promise before the match against Barcelona, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. But this is a matter of the whole team. When it comes to each player specifically, this requires targeted solutions. As Guardiola will say in his book, My Football and the People in My Life, a manager can only devote 30% of his energy to football, and the remaining 70% to things other than football. This isn't because the head coach is slacking off, it's just that managing a team requires this much effort. The simplest thing is that the players on each team come from all over the world and have their own beliefs and values. So how do you integrate them into a whole and get them on the field to win the game for a common goal? Is it enough to just shout a few slogans at them? Anyone who has managed a company knows that it's barely feasible with 2 or 3 people, but it won't work with more than that. This requires management and communication. Yang Hao has always believed that talking about grand principles is useless, you need to be direct and practical. A person will not do things that betray their own interests. Just as Yang Hao was thinking this, Paralesh and Vailron appeared at the door of his office. Please come in, Juan. Yang Hao immediately stood up from his office chair with a smile and went to greet him. What's interesting is that both of them were 25 years old, but one became the head coach and the other became a player. After Yang Hao warmly invited Vailron to sit down, Paralesh left and closed the door behind him. This kid is quite sensible and knows what's good for him. Normally, head coaches and players wouldn't want others to hear their conversations. When I decided to coach Atletico Madrid, everyone told me that Juan Valleran was a trustworthy and reliable player whose abilities were greatly underestimated. Yang Hao offered his praise as soon as they met, which surprised the shy and introverted Valleran, and even made him a little wary. The head coach doesn't seem like a good person, he praises people like that as soon as they meet. Are you trying to fool me? Please add to your favorites, recommend, vote with monthly tickets, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 9 Core Mutiny, Troublemakers. Yang Hao felt that his strength was that he was very good at observing other people's subtle movements and expressions. For example, Valleran's current expression resembled that of a curled-up hedgehog, which prompted him to change his conversational strategy. He began to gently guide Valleran, talking about what had happened in the 2 years since he joined Atletico Madrid. I hope to get to know you better, and to understand our team better. And so, Yang Hao slowly began to chat with Valleran. From the problems Valleran encountered when he first joined Atletico Madrid and tried to integrate into Sachai's team, to Ranieri's use of him, to the differences between Antique's 2 stints as Atletico Madrid coach, and his disagreement with Antique's judgment. Valleran is an honest and frank man. Actually, I think our biggest problem this season is that we have too many young players, and our defense is a serious problem. But Antic doesn't seem to think so. He thinks that the problem with our defense is because our offense is the first to have problems. Offense and defense are always in a dynamic balance. It cannot be said that Antic's viewpoint is wrong. For example, if your attack power is strong enough that your opponent cannot attack, then the problem of defense is not a problem. Yang Hao declined to comment. Valleran has recently heard a lot of boos from Atletico Madrid fans because they feel the team's midfield is too prone to problems, and the most prominent reason is that Valleran is not actively involved in defense. That's not what I'm good at. It's like Sachai always wanted me to improve my physical strength and become more powerful, while also hoping that I would think about defense first and then how to attack when I play football, but I have never met his requirements. Yang Hao nodded, these were all things that could be imagined. Italian coaches, including Sachai and Ranieri, tend to prioritize defense. That's not wrong, but players will also have their own ideas, and you need to adapt. There are also some players who just can't adapt. Do you know why I approached you first? Yang Hao asked, looking directly at Valleran. This star player from a fishing village in the Canary Islands couldn't figure out his head coach. He felt that the coach's eyes were sharp and his words were direct and blunt, which made him feel a little overwhelmed. I believe that if our team wants to turn this unfavorable situation around and successfully avoid relegation, you will be our most important and crucial core player. Valleran looked at the head coach, who was the same age as him, with surprise and doubt in his eyes. But Yang Hao quickly dispelled his doubts. Yang Hao got up, went to his desk, took out a piece of white paper and a pen, and started drawing right in front of Valleran. He set up a 4-2-3-1 formation, with the key point being the number 10 position right in the middle of the number 3. You should be familiar with this tactic, right? Deportivo La Coruña has been using this style of play for years, and I hope you can take on this position. Valleran is certainly no stranger to this tactical approach. Deportivo La Coruña is the La Liga leader this season, and Irurita's tactics have been studied by many people. Like Djamena. De Jong Minha is now Deportivo La Coruña's number 10 attacking midfielder. No, I think his connection with the 2 flanks is not close enough. I hope you can become the core of the team's attack in the frontcourt, able to supply the center forward with ammunition, and become a reliable support point for the midfield and defense to pass the ball out. At the same time, it is also necessary to be able to connect the 2 flanks and, when necessary, form a joint attack with the wingers in the flanks. As Yang Hao spoke, he also drew the rib area on the drawing. Valleran is somewhat introverted and shy, but he is a very intelligent player who immediately thought of Barcelona's number 4 position. With only one defensive midfielder, what is the biggest weakness? Isn't it just flank defense? Why do 2 defensive midfielders exist in football? The reason is simple, because there is a superstar number 10 like Maradona. When one defensive midfielder can't stop the opposing number 10 player, then 2 are needed. Moreover, 2 defensive midfielders can better protect the rib area. However, many teams still insist on using a single defensive midfielder, such as Barcelona. I believe these are all things you excel at and can do very well, Yang Hao said confidently with a smile. Valleran was somewhat tempted. During his 2 years at Atletico Madrid, the team mostly used a 4-4-2 formation, and he was always asked to participate in defense or be pulled to the wing, which were not his strengths. In a 4-4-2 formation, both central midfielders must possess defensive capabilities, unless the midfield is a diamond formation. But now, almost no teams play with a diamond midfield. What about defense? Valérón asked with concern. We will adopt a team-oriented defensive approach. You will have 2 defensive midfielders protecting you. All you need to do is fulfill your part within the team's overall defensive tactics. I can guarantee that you will focus most of your energy on attacking, passing, organizing, and orchestrating. When Valérón heard this, he looked up and stared at the head coach in disbelief. He knew very well that this was a tactic tailor-made for him, maximizing his strengths, minimizing his weaknesses, and fully unleashing his potential. If he had doubted Yang Hao's enthusiasm and praise just now, he is now truly beginning to believe, and has even come to believe. No head coach would tailor tactics to a player they don't value, especially someone like Yang Hao, on whom the entire team's offense is practically pinned. As astute as Valérón could have guessed that Yang Hao would choose Hasselbank as his striker. Kiko held a high position in the locker room and among the fans, but he was never an efficient scorer. Since his serious injury last season, he has not scored a single goal and his performance has been lackluster. Even so, it takes immense courage to take down Kiko. It could even trigger a mutiny in the locker room. After the 2 sides reached a preliminary consensus, Yang Hao further explained his tactical ideas to Valérón. Many people say that Valérón is the Spanish Zidane, but that's only half true. The 2 are very similar in height, technical characteristics, and passing ability. The biggest reason why Valérón is the Spanish Zidane, and Zidane is not the French Valérón, lies in physical confrontation. Zidane's physical strength far surpasses that of Valérón. This outstanding physique allows Zidane to maintain control of the ball even under intense defensive pressure. But Valérón cannot do that. Even when Sachai asked Valérón to increase his physical strength and power, he struggled to do so. That's the difference. In this situation, Yang Hao's tactics also had to accommodate Valérón and Hasselbank, who was at the forefront. If Atletico Madrid wants to build a 4-2-3-1 formation with their current squad, they cannot simply copy the tactics of Deportivo La Coruña or Valencia, especially by adopting a high-pressing defense. Once they press forward, Hasselbank and Valérón are likely to get into close-quarters combat with the defenders, which is not what the 2 players are best at or should do. Therefore, Yang Hao needs to set the team's pressing area around the opponent's 30-meter zone to the midline, giving Hasselbank enough space to attack. Furthermore, he also needs to develop a defensive pressing tactic for the team based on the defensive weaknesses of Hasselbank and Valérón. Simply put, it means trying to force the opponent's ball to the sidelines as much as possible. This would significantly reduce the defensive pressure on Hasselbank and Valérón. However, Solari and Aguilera on the flanks will have to bear more pressing and pressure. There's really nothing we can do about it. To some extent, Valérón, the classic number 10 attacking midfielder, does not meet Yang Hao's requirements, and Hasselbank does not meet Yang Hao's requirements for a centre-forward either. But right now, he only has these 2 players at his disposal, so he can only develop tactics based on their strengths and weaknesses. After chatting with Valérón for more than half an hour, the Spaniard left with a noticeably more relaxed expression, and his attitude towards Yang Hao was completely different from when he entered. Yang Hao could even sense that Valérón was really looking forward to his performance in this tactical approach. Valérán's agent is also secretly contacting teams for him. Yang Hao is not sure if he has made any moves with Deportivo La Coruña, but Valérón definitely has the idea of leaving the team. Atletico Madrid's performance this season has made everyone lack confidence in the team. Since they're leaving, they naturally hope to have more leverage in negotiations when joining a new team. Moreover, Valérón is a very professional person with extremely high standards for himself. He hadn't seen any opportunities before, so he let it go. Now that Yang Hao has given him a chance to repay Atletico Madrid and prove himself, wouldn't he seize it by all means? In this regard, Yang Hao probably has more confidence in Valérón than Valérón himself. Yang Hao was very satisfied with his conversation with Valérón. After seeing the Spaniards off, he asked Perales to call over Dutch striker Hasselbank. Unlike Valérón, Hasselbank is not so easy to talk to. In fact, this guy has the kind of rebellious personality. When dealing with players like this, you often can't go against them. Even coaches like Ranieri and Antic might not be able to get Hasselbank to obey, so what makes Yang Hao so confident that his demands can be met by Hasselbank? It's more likely the Dutchman will lose his temper on the spot. Therefore, when dealing with players like Hasselbank, it's often necessary to go along with them, understand their psychology, know what they want most, and then guide them appropriately. Before Antic took over, Hasselbank was scoring goals in the league, surpassing players such as Roy Mackay, Milosevic, and Catania in the La Liga top scorer list, and was on par with Racing Santander's Salva Valesta. However, since Antic took over, Hasselbank's goal-scoring efficiency has clearly declined recently. He has only scored 2 goals in the past 6 league matches. On the contrary, Roy Mackay has scored 6 goals in the last 3 league matches, especially a hat-trick against Atletico Madrid, making the Dutch striker the most talked-about player. As a fellow Dutchman, Hasselbank also felt the pressure from Roy Mackay. Yang Hao believes that the key figure in getting Hasselbank under control is none other than the Black Swan, Rijkaard. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Our head coach is no ordinary person. Atletico Madrid players waited in the rest area for the afternoon training session. When they saw Valerian emerge from the head coach's office and return to the rest area, and the quick-witted physiotherapist Paralesh run over and quietly call Hasselbank away, they immediately started whispering among themselves. When a new coach takes office, it is essential for him to communicate with the players. Everyone had anticipated this, but no one expected the order to be like this. Valerian is surprisingly ranked first, while the team's top scorer Hasselbank is ranked second. Everyone chuckled to themselves, many waiting to see what would happen. Who is Hasselbank? This kid is a troublemaker, competitive, and doesn't respect anyone. The 2 captains have probably already spoken. If Kiko is called first, Hasselbank will probably accept it. There's no way around it, Kiko is indeed a major contributor to the team's success, and the Dutchman has to acknowledge that in his resume. Unexpectedly, it was Valerian. During his 2 seasons at Atletico Madrid, this guy from a fishing village in the Canary Islands did not play well, and many people even criticized his playing style. Because his defense is really bad. The defense, in particular, has a lot of complaints about Valerian. The fans have all seen this, so they are now booing Valerian. Just wait and see, it looks like a fight is about to break out. In the rest area, someone said something that made many people laugh. Given Hasselbank's personality, he might actually do it. Others reacted in different ways. Both captains were somewhat worried, while others were secretly gloating and waiting to see what would happen. Valerian turned his head and glanced at Kiko, finding him expressionless and unable to tell what he was thinking. He's been acting strangely ever since he was seriously injured. That's understandable, actually. When someone is once so powerful and admired by so many people, and then suddenly falls from grace, who can bear it? Valerian was smart. He even guessed that the new head coach wasn't stupid either. He probably knew that Kiko was difficult to deal with, so he first settled things with the others and stabilized the situation. Even if Kiko wanted to cause trouble, he wouldn't be able to. Professional football is just that cruel. An injury can completely change a person's fate. Just as Valerian was lost in thought, Ruben Baraja suddenly came over and gently patted the arm of the dazed Valerian. "Hey, how's our head coach?" Baraja asked with concern. He knew the rules of the locker room and didn't inquire about the content of the conversation, he was more concerned about the head coach as a person. Valerian's personality makes it difficult for him to make close friends, but Baraja is someone he can talk to more. He is different from Sachai, Ranieri and Antic. Nonsense, he's so young, and way more handsome than those old men, Baraja joked first, then asked, how exactly is he different? Valerian hesitated for a moment, then casually leaned towards Baraja and said softly, he wants to play as a double defensive midfielder. Baraja opened his mouth in surprise and almost cried out. Double. Baraja was so surprised that he was almost incoherent. He quickly covered his mouth with his hands, afraid that he might accidentally shout it out and be overheard by others, ruining the head coach's good time. Valerian nodded emphatically. He knew why Baraja was so nervous and agitated. Ruben Baraja comes from Valladolid. He was a product of Valladolid's youth academy and joined Atletico Madrid on a free transfer in 1996, hoping to make a name for himself in the double-winning capital team. He doesn't have any dazzling talent or outstanding skills, he's more about diligence and practicality. Just like over the years, from Sachai to Ranieri to Antic, the biggest evaluation of Baraja is that he can run, has the awareness to make late runs into the box, and has a long-range shot. Of course, his passing is very good, and his defense is also very good. He can be considered a well-rounded player in both offense and defense. But so what? When a team plays with 4 midfielders, the defensive midfielders need to act as a wall. Whether in terms of height, strength, or technical characteristics, Baber is clearly a better fit than Baraja. This is why Baber can become a key player on the team, while Baraja cannot. But if the team does change its formation and adopts a double defensive midfield, then Baraja's opportunity will come. In a 2 defensive midfielder configuration, it's unlikely to be 2 players with outstanding defensive abilities, most likely, they would be 2 complementary players. Baber's passing and playmaking abilities are not strong, but his defense is excellent. Baraja, on the other hand, has a good ability to make late runs into the box and is also a good passer. This creates a certain degree of complementarity between them. Are you sure? Baraja asked, somewhat incredulous. He's already 25 years old and has been waiting patiently for his opportunity. Aside from injuries or absences, Baber rarely starts. Even when he does start or come off the bench, the team's tactics make it difficult for him to showcase his strengths, leaving him with no outlet for his energy. This is our last chance, Velron said gravely. A chance to avoid relegation. If the new manager's tactical reforms fail again, Atletico Madrid will truly be finished. This is not only a disgrace to Atletico Madrid, but also a stain on the careers of all of them. From now on, whenever anyone mentions Atletico Madrid this season, they will mention all the players who were on the field. If the new head coach is truly willing to give me a chance, I will fight tooth and nail for him. Baraja said emphatically. Velron was well aware of his teammates' abilities, but saying something like that at this moment was a bit too childish. In La Liga, if you give Atletico Madrid's head coach a chance, there are plenty of people willing to fight tooth and nail for him. I heard he promoted that Uruguayan youngster from the reserve team, Valleran reminded him. Are you talking about Pablo Garcia? Baraja was also very interested in this player. Valleran nodded. This player has not yet made an appearance for the first team since joining the team, but he has trained with the team and his strength is quite good. His height and strength are similar to Baber's, but South American players have better footwork. Don't we already have Fresnedoso and Hugo Leal? Baraja frowned slightly. The more people join, the fiercer the competition becomes. Who knows? Velron shook his head. He sensed that the new head coach had many ideas, some of which were similar to Sachai's. For example, Yang Hao mentioned to him that the key defensive position should be set up in the 30-meter zone between the opponent's halfway line and the center line. In other words, as soon as the opponent's ball goes 30 meters out, Atletico Madrid will start pressing and pressing. But they are all forms of coercion and oppression, and they also come in different types. Sometimes it's localized pressure, which is functional, such as buying time for the defense to get into position, delaying the opponent's attack, or forcing the opponent to pass the ball to the wing, etc. Sometimes it's a full-court press, then it has only one goal, to win the ball. Sometimes it's pseudo-oppression, which is pretending to oppress, with the aim of forcing the other party to respond and giving oneself more breathing time. Players need to adapt to different situations on the field. Atletico Madrid players are actually quite familiar with this. Because that's what Sachai demanded. But Yang Hao is different. For example, he doesn't want the opponent to launch an attack from the middle, so pressing means forcing the opponent to move the ball to the wing. At this point, the wingers need to actively push forward, even further than the center forward. That's very special. Velron didn't tell Baraja either, but Yang Hao revealed more tactical details to him. One of these points was that Yang Hao wanted Velron to be the core player. Just now, Yang Hao said something that still excites and shocks Velron even now. I've watched the team's games and performance over the past 2 seasons. Last season, our players were not used to Sachai's requirements, especially the establishment of the off-the-ball movement system, which was the reason for our poor overall performance. Sachai's coaching was like going off track. Antic and Ranieri corrected it, but by then, many of our players were already confused. They were switching back and forth between several different tactical philosophies, and many of them were not adapted at all. So right now, our off-the-ball movement system is a complete mess. Instead of letting everyone run around aimlessly on the field, it's better to have them run closely around a core player. And at this core, it is you. At that moment, Yang Hao pointed at Valeron with unwavering determination, without any doubt or hesitation. This is the first time in his career that a Spanish attacking midfielder has been entrusted with such high expectations. Is there anything more touching than tailoring tactics to him and building a team around him? After returning to the rest area, the more Belron thought about it, the more he felt that the flame in his heart, which had long been extinguished, had begun to burn again. And the more it burns, the stronger it gets. As time went on, everyone began to wonder. Because the head coach's office was completely silent, eerily quiet. The uproar they expected didn't happen. Could it be that Hasselbank made a move too quickly and ruthlessly, taking down the head coach in one fell swoop? Should we rush over and save our head coach? Just as everyone was lost in thought, the office door suddenly opened. Then Hasselbank walked out with a smile, turning back to say goodbye to the head coach as he left, and closing the door behind him. The Dutchman was all smiles the whole way, grinning to reveal his dazzling white teeth, almost as if he was about to burst into song. What's going on? Has Hasselbank been knocked senseless? She was furious when she came in, how come she looks so beautiful now? The Dutchman entered with a smile, and upon seeing the astonished expressions on everyone's faces, he immediately burst into laughter. Our new head coach is so nice, I like him. Everyone almost collapsed. What's going on? Have you been brainwashed? Hasselbank's transformation is too drastic. But that's impossible. He's already made almost all the necessary arrangements and is going to leave the team at the end of this season, isn't he? At this point, what incentives does the head coach still have to entice him? When everyone looked at the head coach's office again, a sense of mystery involuntarily arose in their hearts. Our head coach is no ordinary person. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 11's deception skills are on cooldown. Yang Hao said that Hasselbank is a good kid. Yeah, her personality is a bit strange. Or rather, he's rather impulsive. Hasselbank's career can be described as unfortunate. He started his career in AZ Alkmaar's youth academy, but was kicked out when he was 20 years old, and then went 2 years without playing time. Later, he went to the lower leagues of Portugal, where he gradually rose to prominence and was able to transfer to Boa Vista. But by then, he was already 24 years old. Many people say that Van Nistelrooy was a late bloomer, so what about Hasselbank? After that, the Dutchman took off like a rocket, going from Boa Vista to Leeds United, and then from Leeds United to Atletico Madrid. Now, he is a top scorer in European football. Of course, for many years to come, fans' opinions of Hasselbank will be very polarized. Some fans really like him, feeling that watching him play is full of power and impact, that he has an innate masculine energy that makes people feel excited, and that's how football should be played. However, some fans dislike him intensely, believing him to be like a lone wolf whose passing skills have been taken away by God. He only knows how to go it alone, not how to pass, and while he excels at scoring goals and racking up stats, he contributes very little to the team. In fact, even now, opinions on Hasselbank remain polarized. Even within the professional field, some head coaches like him a lot, while others really dislike him. For example, Frank Rijkaard, the current head coach of the Dutch national team. In Rijkaard's tactical system, the centre forward he wanted was modelled after Kluivert, and he didn't even appreciate Van Nistelrooy and Roy Mackay. Not to mention players like Hasselbank who don't have a pass button. This is why Hasselbank's position in the Dutch national team is in an awkward position. It's 2000 now, and this summer is the European Championship. The Dutch national team is currently finalizing its squad for the tournament, and all the players are eager to compete. Roy Mackay has been scoring goals in a flurry of form lately, a fact that Hasselbank has also noticed. How could he not be anxious? So Yang Hao specifically addressed his thoughts and told him clearly that Atletico Madrid would do everything in its power to support him in competing for a place in the national team, and that they would do everything they could to crush Roy Mackay. Believe me, you are the best scorer in Europe. Anyway, saying nice things doesn't cost money, so what's there to be afraid of? As a result, Hasselbank was agitated, and his previously extinguished desire to play for the national team was rekindled. As long as he scores more goals, performs well enough, and receives enough support from the fans, Rijkaard will have to bring him along, even if he doesn't want to. More importantly, Van Nistelrooy is injured. This is truly a stroke of luck for Hasselbank. God has gone to such lengths to help you, and you still aren't seizing the opportunity. You're doomed. And just like that, Hasselbank easily got it done. After seeing Hasselbank off, Yang Hao sat in his office, shaking his head with amusement. He wasn't exaggerating, Atletico Madrid really needs Hasselbank's goal right now. At the same time, he also persuaded Hasselbank to take on some tactical tasks. Why? Try to present a comprehensive picture, so that Rijkaard can see your tactical role and change his opinion of you. Do labor and management really need him to change their perception? Well, it's one thing to be stubborn, but Hasselbank eventually reluctantly agreed to the head coach's arrangement. This made Yang Hao realize that Hasselbank was even easier to fool than Bellerin. Bellerin may look shy, but he's actually quite shrewd and calculating. Hasselbank may seem like a difficult person to deal with, but in reality, all his thoughts are written all over his face. Just as Yang Hao finished meeting with Bellerin and Hasselbank, he sat in his office, took a sip of water, rested for a bit, and sorted out his results and who he was going to meet next. Little Hill suddenly called Yang Hao and told him that he had found a suitable coach. Cesar Mendiotto. Who is this? Yang Hao had never heard of it before. But after Xiao Xier explained, Yang Hao finally understood. Cesar Mendiotto is somewhat like a second-generation player and a third-generation fan of Atletico Madrid. What does that mean? His entire family has been die-hard Atletico Madrid fans since his grandparents' generation. His father, José Mendiodoro, began his youth training at Atletico Madrid in the 1950s and 60s and became a professional player. In the 1980s, Cesar Mendio followed in his father's footsteps, receiving youth training at Atletico Madrid and eventually joining the first team. Although he couldn't stay at Atletico Madrid and later played for several other teams before retiring in 1998, he still had a lot of connections within the Atletico Madrid club and among its fans. For example, he and vice-captain Aguilera were teammates on the youth team. Little Hill's idea was that using this person would better help Yang Hao familiarize himself with Atletico Madrid and La Liga affairs, while also handling some relationships with the players. It's worth mentioning that after retiring, Mendiotto worked part-time as a scout for Atletico Madrid and recommended many promising young players to the club. The club had a very high opinion of him, otherwise they wouldn't have recommended him to Yang Hao. Yang Hao thought the coach was good, but what he needed most was a head coach-type assistant. Don't worry, we've been looking and we have a short list, but as you know, it's not easy to find the right people. Why don't you narrow it down a bit more? Little Hill complained. Ideally, they should be proficient in the 4-2-3-1 formation, play high-pressing tactics, and be good at training. Generally speaking, head coaches who can coach independently are usually good at tactics, but they are less likely to be skilled at training. Yang Hao's statement immediately narrowed the scope considerably, but also increased the difficulty. Okay, I'll do it as soon as possible, but you should also be mentally prepared that you might not be able to make it in time for the match against Barcelona. Little Hill gave him a heads up in advance. This is quite normal. Finding a qualified assistant coach in just 3 days is no easy task. Yang Hao realized that he was seriously short of time. But there are many things that need to be done quickly. After hanging up with Hill, Pareles called over Solari, Capdevila, and others one by one. These are all players that Yang Hao values highly. The left flank, formed by Solari and Capdevila, is Atletico Madrid's best attacking side and is the one Yang Hao needs to rely on the most. Because on the right flank, right-back Gasper is very good defensively, but his attacking ability is relatively average. Aguilera is getting old, and now Atletico Madrid's right flank can only play it safe. On the other hand, on the left flank, Solari's abilities are undeniable, and Capdevila's attacking prowess is also quite impressive. Atletico Madrid's attack needs to start from the left flank, which is why he first met with Solari and Capdevila. Judging from Solari's record at Atletico Madrid and Inter Milan, he is a very responsible player who rarely complains. Of course, this does not mean that he does not have his own ideas. Born into a family of professional footballers, his father and uncle ran a football academy in Argentina, from which Mascherano came. So almost the entire Solari family were football players. Yang Hao made no mention of the widely circulated rumors that Solari was about to transfer to arch-rival Real Madrid. He only told Solari that he hoped he would give his all for Atletico Madrid in every match to come. The Argentinians have also made guarantees and commitments regarding this. Solari's later appointment as Real Madrid's head coach shows that he is a very intelligent player. So when Yang Hao told him his ideas, Solari's first reaction was that he would be very tired. Aguilera on the right wing prioritizes stability, and given her age, she's unlikely to run much further, so she'll have to play on the left wing. After thinking it over, Solari agreed to Yang Hao's arrangement, saying that he would definitely be able to complete the task given to him by the head coach. Yes, his running ability has always been quite good. This can be seen from his time at Real Madrid, where he was able to establish himself in a star-studded squad. As for Capdevila, this homegrown left-back needs no introduction. Yang Hao gave him extremely high praise, even saying he has the potential to become the best left-back in Europe. Of course, that's a bit of an exaggeration. But considering Capdevila's performance this season, and the fact that he's only 22 years old, Yang Hao's praise isn't actually excessive. Compared to Salgado on the right wing, the Spanish national team doesn't have any outstanding players on the left wing. I think you are no worse than Juanfran and others, and I even think you performed better than them. So, I was thinking, maybe you should put on a better performance to get Camacho's attention, especially in matches against strong teams. What do you think? Looking across Spain, is there any more compelling clash between two powerhouses than the match against Barcelona? Who doesn't like to be praised? Especially since Capdevila is only 22 years old and still very young and inexperienced, he never expected that this shameless head coach would deceive him like this. I have to say, it's actually quite addictive. Especially after Yang Hao told him how much he had high hopes for the left flank, believing that with Capdevila anchoring it, the left flank would be Atletico Madrid's key weapon to turn the tide and defeat Barcelona. This immediately made the young Spanish player agree with him from the bottom of his heart. He's currently at an age where he feels invincible and dares to challenge even God. The last person Yang Hao met before the afternoon training session began was Balaha. This is also the one he has the highest hopes for among the two defensive midfielders. In fact, if he can stay on after this season, the first person he wants to keep is Baraja. The reason is simple, it's too difficult to find two defensive midfielders. Moreover, Baraja is at the prime of his career, so there's even less reason to let him leave the team. To Yang Hao's utter surprise, as soon as Baraja walked into his office, and he had only just hinted at wanting to play as a double defensive midfielder in the upcoming match, the guy became incredibly enthusiastic and made a solemn vow. "Boss, trust me, give me a chance, and I'll fight tooth and nail for you." Yang Hao was stunned. "Your deception skills are still on cooldown, why did you give in? How are novel authors supposed to pad their numbers if you keep doing things the way they always do? Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading." End of this chapter. Chapter 12 The Terrifying Barcelona. The afternoon training session proceeded as planned. Yang Hao planned to select 4 players from the youth team, but only 2 arrived, Pablo Garcia and Antonio Lopez. The former is in the second team, and the latter is in the U19 team. Both have training scheduled for today. Torres and Gavi are both in the U17 team, so they don't have a heavy schedule and get a break after their weekend matches. Yang Hao wasn't in a hurry. He just told Pal Alish to keep an eye on things and that he would arrange for them to train with the first team another day. The players who spoke with Yang Hao in the afternoon have generally gained some understanding of the new coach, and some have even reached a consensus, which has improved the training atmosphere to some extent. Those who hadn't yet been called over by Yang Hao to talk were all waiting. In this situation, whoever communicates with the head coach first gains an advantage in the competition. During the team's training session, Yang Hao was still standing on the training field, but his thoughts had already drifted to distant Barcelona. This is Atletico Madrid's next opponent. Copa del Rey semi-final. Barcelona is incredibly strong right now. From any perspective, this team is a veritable constellation of superstars. Luis Figo and Rivaldo, 2 footballer of the years, need no introduction. Then there's Luis Enrique, Kluivert, Guardiola, Zenden, Cocu, the De Boer brothers, Reiziger, Bogaert. In such a star-studded lineup, Xavi, Reina, Puyol, and others can only be considered as up-and-coming young talents. Many fans in later generations always feel that Van Gaal's time coaching Barcelona was a failure. But in reality, that's not the case. Before Van Gaal, Barcelona's head coach in the 96-97 season was Bobby Robson. Although that season saw the emergence of Ronaldo, one of the most unforgettable and phenomenal players in the history of world football, Barcelona still lost the league to Real Madrid, led by Raúl, Suker, Mijatovic, and Seedorf, by 2 points. It is worth mentioning that a certain special person followed Robson to Barcelona during this season as Ronaldo's translator, and stayed to continue helping Van Gaal after Robson and Ronaldo both left in the summer of 1997. Van Gaal arrived at Camp Nou with the halo of a Champions League winner. Prior to this, Barcelona had been nurtured by several renowned Dutch coaches, including Michels and Cruyff, and thus possessed a strong Dutch football culture. Hopefully, Van Gaal can lead Barcelona to a revival. Thus, Van Gaal single-handedly created the Dutch contingent in the Barcelona dressing room. Do you know how many Dutch players are in Barcelona's first team right now? 8. Moreover, they all play an important role. It's fair to say that the Dutch contingent completely dominated the local players and other forces in the Barcelona dressing room. In the 97/98 and 98/99 seasons, Barcelona performed exceptionally well, winning the La Liga title by a large margin both times. Under these circumstances, no one had any objections. But gradually, as the team's performance began to decline, the underlying conflicts began to surface. For example, Rivaldo kept complaining that Van Gaal was wasting his talent by placing him on the wing. The Brazilian prodigy believed he should be positioned in the middle of the field. This conflict has persisted throughout Barcelona's season, especially recently when Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson personally fueled the flames by expressing his strong interest in Rivaldo. In a fit of anger, Van Gaal launched a scathing attack on Ferguson, sarcastically remarking, "Manchester United should check their wallets, can they afford Rivaldo?" Not satisfied with that, Van Gaal retaliated, saying, "It's a very interesting phenomenon. Ferguson just said that even if they sold Beckham, they wouldn't give him a raise, but in the blink of an eye, they're eyeing players they can't afford at all. How strange." The battle of wits between top coaches is often this simple, direct, and brutal. Rivaldo's drama is escalating and the conflict is spreading, especially in the league where Barcelona has been unable to catch up with Deportivo La Coruña, putting immense pressure on everyone at the club and fueling growing discontent among fans. Many people said that Real Madrid fans had too high expectations, they wanted to win, and they wanted to win beautifully. In fact, the same is true for Barcelona fans today. Even Barcelona's veteran centre-back Abelardo publicly criticized Van Gaal, believing that his tactics this season are just as ugly as Chelsea's in the Premier League. These are Abelardo's exact words, "He's really good at making sweeping generalizations." Because in 2000, Premier League teams, especially teams like Chelsea, played really badly. It was under these circumstances, both internally and externally, that Barcelona suffered a crushing 0-3 defeat at home to Real Mallorca in the last round. Eto'o scored twice. Real Mallorca employs a 4-4-2 formation, relying on counterattacks. This will definitely be Atletico Madrid's strategy against Barcelona, the key is how to defend and how to counterattack. At present, Atletico Madrid does not have a counterattacking weapon like Eto'o, not to mention that Mallorca has Tristan. After training, Yang Hao returned to his office and found the video of Barcelona's previous match against Real Mallorca. Barcelona are still playing their 4-3-3 formation, but Guardiola has recently lost his starting position and has been replaced by Cocu. Who would have thought that this 31-year-old Barcelona captain would be relegated to the bench? In terms of personnel, Van Gaal still trusts Dutch players more, so players like goalkeeper Hesp, centre-forward Kluivert, centre-back Frank de Boer, and Cocu will continue to start. Due to a lack of options for left-back this season, Barcelona has either used Reiziger as a substitute or Bogaert. Recently, Bogaert has been playing on the left wing. Therefore, the back line should consist of Bogaert, Vallen de Boer, Abelardo, and Puyol. Yes, Barcelona's future captain is currently playing as a right-back. He and Xavi are among Van Gaal's most trusted young players, and with Gabri and Cocu, the midfield trio is complete. The center forward will definitely be Kluivert. The difference lies on the wings. Luis Figo and Rivaldo should also start, given that they are both big-name stars, and Barcelona just lost to Real Mallorca and desperately needs a victory. The substitutes are Finnish skater Litmanen, Figo to Simeo, and Dutch winger Zenden. If Hasselbank is the biggest star in Atletico Madrid's squad, then any player you pick out right now in Barcelona's squad is just as good-looking as the Dutch striker. That's what makes Barcelona so formidable. But as a time traveler from 2023, Yang Hao is long past the age of blindly believing in sports stars. He understands better than anyone that the essence of football is the team effort. No matter how many star players there are, if they all play their own game, even a super team like the Galacticos will eventually fall apart. They even got beaten down by teams from lower leagues. Yang Hao's original plan was to persist with the left flank attack, but after watching the Barcelona vs Real Mallorca match, he suddenly realized that even if Figo didn't actively track back, Atletico Madrid's left flank might not be able to break through Barcelona's right flank. Puyol is an outstanding player, very fast, and has excellent one-on-one defensive ability. Solari probably won't have an advantage. On the left, Bogard is a left-footed centre-back playing on the left wing. He is 1.88 meters tall and has Surinamese heritage, which is enough to imagine that he is excellent in physical confrontation, but his footwork is rather clumsy. He is tall and strong but not agile, and his speed is also relatively slow. This is precisely Aguilera's advantage. He is only 1.74 meters tall, a typical Spanish winger. Having thought this through, Yang Hao had already made up his mind. By the time I finished watching the game replay, it was already dark. After training, the players and coaches all left work one after another. Parallesh, however, chose to stay. This young man is really clever, and Yang Hao admires him quite a bit. The key is that he is also reliable in handling matters. Hill had just called him and learned that he didn't have a car. She was on her way from Calderon to pick him up and suggested they go out for dinner and have a couple of drinks at a bar to relieve some stress. As Yang Hao walked out of the office, he stretched vigorously to loosen his muscles and bones. His first day in office was both very busy and very fulfilling. He hardly wasted a minute, and his pace was extremely fast. So much so that now, when he has some free time and looks at the training ground in front of him, he suddenly feels a sense of unreality. He really became the head coach of Atletico Madrid. It was at this moment that Yang Hao noticed Parallesh had come over again, with someone else beside him. It was Kiko. This startled him. Because he wasn't fully ready yet. According to Yang Hao's plan, he should first win over most of the other people, and then slowly talk to Kiko. That way, even if the negotiations really fall apart, Kiko won't cause any big commotion in the locker room. But now, before Yang Hao was ready, Kiko came knocking on his door. Did he discover something? Despite his own wild thoughts, Yang Hao still greeted them with a smile. "Hello, Kiko, haven't you gone back yet?" Kiko looked somewhat dejected, lacking his usual high spirits. Clearly, the long-term injury, the recent slump, and physical reasons had all taken their toll on him. Those who haven't experienced it can never understand this kind of mental torment. Just like many people criticize Ronaldo for gaining weight later on, Yang Hao has always felt that Ronaldo, even with a fuller figure, is still worthy of respect, because his ability to return to the football field and overcome those injuries is itself an extremely remarkable thing. The same goes for Kiko. The Spanish prince stayed behind to receive physical therapy and complete his rehabilitation program. Yang Hao noticed the wink Parallesh was giving him. Clearly, it was an excuse. It seems he really did stay behind specifically to ambush me. There's nothing we can do. What's meant to happen will happen. Come in, let's talk inside. Yang Hao warmly invited Jike into the house. Parallesh made an apologetic gesture, clearly unable to stop Kiko either. Yang Hao said he understood and indicated that everything was all right, reassuring him. Before entering, Yang Hao took a deep breath to calm himself down. Upon entering the room, he sat directly opposite Kiko, looking directly at the prince who was so beloved by Atletico Madrid fans. Let's stop beating around the bush and get straight to the point. What do you want to talk to me about? Yang Hao chose to get straight to the point. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommended, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 13 Atletico Madrid is lost. Even though he was already sitting in Hill's car, Yang Hao's mind was still filled with the scene of his conversation with Kiko. He originally thought that Kiko had come to confront him. Unexpectedly, the Atletico Madrid striker came to express his feelings to him. "Please believe me, I will never become you, or a problem for the team." Yang Hao was deeply shocked when he heard those words. It's not just the words themselves, but the tone and expression with which Kiko said them, all of which represent his feelings at that moment and the weight these words and this club hold in his heart. Kiko said he was very clear about his problem. He had said similar things to Antic before, but Antic felt that the team needed him right now. It's not just his performance on the field, but also his influence among fans, players, and in the locker room. Therefore, even though Kiko's performance on the field was not as good as before, Antic still let him play one game after another. And they all played the full match. Yang Hao cannot comment on whether Antic's decision was right or wrong, because the result of the match has already provided the answer. Although it is cruel. Since Kiko had revealed his feelings, Yang Hao couldn't hide them either, otherwise he would appear petty. So he frankly told Kiko all his thoughts and ideas. He insisted that the team needed to adjust its tactics, especially to strengthen its defense. He believed that the 4-2-3-1 formation could activate Valorant and maximize the team's defensive capabilities. However, this means that Yang Hao cannot choose Kiko over Hasselbank. In that instant, Yang Hao clearly felt the light in Kiko's eyes dimming rapidly, replaced by dejection. His era has ended. But he quickly cheered up and said he could accept the head coach's arrangements as long as they were good for the team. "You don't even have to include me on the list." Yang Hao has always felt that professional football is a world of fame and fortune, full of interests and calculations. But Kiko's actions today have truly made him feel overwhelmed. What makes football so captivating is that behind the pursuit of profit and calculation lies a touching and genuine emotion. Yang Hao told Kiko that he is still very important to the team, not only in the locker room, not only as a substitute, but also because of one person, a player I think very, very highly. "Who?" Kiko asked. "Fernando Torres." "It's him." Kiko smiled. He knew Torres, and was quite familiar with him. Yang Hao hopes that Kiko can play a greater role in mentoring Torres and others. Given Torres' current age and ability, regardless of whether Atletico Madrid can avoid relegation this season, he will not be Yang Hao's first choice next season because he is still too young. But Torres will be a key player that Yang Hao will focus on developing. "Trust me, stay put and continue to play your part. You will soon see an Atletico Madrid team that is stronger than ever before." Yang Hao made this promise with absolute confidence. "I just saw Kiko come out of your office. How did your talk go?" As Hill drove, he asked with concern. Kiko still holds considerable influence among Atletico Madrid fans. Yang Hao briefly recounted the conversation, and Xiao Xie was deeply moved. Kiko comes from Cadiz, but the Atletico Madrid spirit is in his blood and his life. Yang Hao smiled, but suddenly a question arose in his mind: what exactly is the Atletico Madrid spirit that you guys keep talking about? He knew that this was a football culture, a football spirit. But what exactly is it that made Kiko make such a choice? Little Hill sighed and smiled bitterly. "It doesn't matter anymore. Not many people care about this anymore." "Why?" Yang Hao asked. "I don't know, I haven't studied it, but I feel like the whole world suddenly became rushed at some point. Everyone is busy, everyone is tense, and everyone has become impatient and unable to calm down." Yang Hao rarely heard such thoughtful words from Little Hill. "I remember when I was in school, the number of Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid fans in my class was about the same. We would often get together and fight outside of school to support our teams." Speaking of his glorious achievements back then, Hill Jr. had a proud smile on his face. "But now, when I visited a primary school, I found that out of 20 or 30 students in a class, you might not find even one Atletico Madrid fan. Many people have changed. I asked those kids, why do you like Real Madrid? The most common answer they gave was because Real Madrid wins often, and then it was because of the star players, such as Raúl, Redondo, Suker, and Mijatovic. Young fans are like that, and so are media reporters. They all only revolve around big teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona." Yang Hao wasn't a local, so he couldn't understand Xiao Xie's complicated feelings, but he could see the trend clearly. Times have changed. With the pace of life getting faster and faster, everyone is putting their time and energy into work, family and other aspects, and no one is willing to spend too much emotion and feelings on football anymore. Despite this, they are still willing to pay for tickets to enter the venue and sit in front of the TV to watch the live broadcast on time. Thus, as Van Gaal said, football became a form of entertainment, a show. Everyone who walks into a stadium or sits in front of a TV to watch a game does so simply to enjoy the brief moment of catharsis that brings them joy. It may be short, but it's enough. It's not particularly obvious now, but with the advent of the internet and globalization in the coming years, this trend will become more pronounced, and the fan base will become more diverse. This is the trend. You either change yourself and adapt to it, or you will fall behind the times and be eliminated. You know, many fans misunderstand that we and Athletic Bilbao both wear red and white stripes, and they think that Athletic Bilbao is imitating us, but it's actually the opposite. On the contrary. Yes, Atletico Madrid was originally the Madrid branch of Athletic Bilbao. They were the second football club established in Spain because they were in the north and were the first to be exposed to football culture from England. Yang Hao was completely unaware of this connection. We initially used the Athletic Bilbao crest, which combined the Bilbao and Biscay shields, featuring the bridge and contest of Saint Anthony, the powerful Haro family wolf totem, the tree of Guernica, and the cross of Saint Andrew. More than a decade after our founding, we finally had our own team logo, red and white stripes, representing our mattress makers, 7 stars from the flag of the Madrid Autonomous Community, and a bear reaching towards a strawberry tree, representing the city of Madrid. Just like the Bilbao region's rebellion against the capital, Atletico Madrid has inherited this spirit of resistance. From the moment we were founded, we have been fighting against all inequalities and authoritarian institutions, never compromising, and fighting to the very last moment. If Real Madrid represents nobility and royalty, then we at Atletico Madrid represent all the insignificant ordinary people in this city. Therefore, in our Atletico Madrid values, we have represented hard work, humility, sacrifice, and tenacity over the past century, as well as resistance against another football giant in Madrid, Real Madrid. Yang Hao listened quietly, and he suddenly understood a little about Gil's complicated feelings for Atletico Madrid. The Atletico Madrid values he had been instilled with since childhood have collapsed. He had always believed that Atletico Madrid represented the ordinary people of Madrid, all ordinary people, but now he suddenly realized that these people no longer needed to be represented by them. Not only that, they also turned around and went to support Real Madrid, the power that Atletico Madrid had always wanted to resist. The Hill family lacked the funds to compete with Real Madrid, and their emotional state had collapsed, which is why young Hill wanted to sell the team. His father, Old Hill, was still fighting. Even after learning of Gil's various problems, including corruption and illegal activities, Atletico Madrid's die-hard fans still insist that this is a form of suppression against Atletico Madrid by powerful figures. Is this factor involved? Actually, it's not necessarily true that it doesn't exist. The court's acquittal of Hill on charges of embezzlement and tax evasion has undoubtedly further solidified Atletico Madrid fans' belief in this matter. But what if you're innocent? There are fewer and fewer like-minded people around, especially among the younger generation. It's becoming increasingly difficult to find an Atletico Madrid fan. This is the reason for Gil's panic and the root cause of Atletico Madrid's decline. In the future, how and in what capacity will Atletico Madrid establish itself in this city? I suspect that no one knows this, and everyone is confused. And so, Atletico Madrid lost their way. Yang Hao suddenly remembered Atletico Madrid's parent club, Athletic Bilbao. Many people say that the Basque Lions are a very peculiar team, and everyone who has coached them can feel their unique football culture. Perhaps that's what they're talking about. Athletic Bilbao was just luckier than Atletico Madrid, they weren't in the capital and didn't have a fierce rival like Real Madrid. Even so, Athletic Bilbao is still stubbornly persisting, using only Basque players. Some say this is a backward and self-enclosed decision, but isn't it also a way to protect the football culture and values of one's own club? Let's work together. Yang Hao suddenly said to Xiao Xie. He had a smile on his face. Little Hill frowned at first, but quickly relaxed and laughed along with Yang Hao. Yes, let's work together. Yang Hao needs to work hard to establish himself in the Atletico Madrid coaching position and strive to become a qualified, even excellent, Atletico Madrid head coach, leading the team to conquer territory on the football field. Meanwhile, Gilberto, filled with doubt and anxiety, will strive to find a new path for Atletico Madrid, and to re-establish the Atletico Madrid spirit in this city, among its fans, especially the younger generation. At this moment, they truly became like-minded. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, follow my reading, and recommend it. End of this chapter. Chapter 14 Unexpected Changes. Before transmigrating, Yang Hao was a third-rate online writer who had been writing about football for over a decade. One of his favorite techniques in writing about coaches is to portray himself as being looked down upon by the media, fans, colleagues, and everyone else when he first takes office, and then gradually turn the tables and change people's opinions through each game. Surprisingly, readers seem to really enjoy this formula. After time traveling and taking over as coach of Atletico Madrid, Yang Hao and everyone at Atletico Madrid felt that this news would become a major sensation in the Spanish media. Fire the renowned coach Antic and hire a rookie with no experience, this is exactly Coach Wen's usual tactic. Yang Hao was even mentally prepared to be bombarded by major Spanish media outlets the next day. Not only him, but everyone at Atletico Madrid is on high alert, especially the public relations department. While instructing the public relations department to handle the situation discreetly, Xiaoxi also kept reassuring Yang Hao, telling him not to be too nervous, that there was nothing seriously wrong, and that he could get through it. Yang Hao thought the same thing. He hopes to be like the male protagonist in the coaching novel, making a comeback, marrying a rich and beautiful woman, and reaching the pinnacle of life. To his surprise, many Spanish media outlets did report the news the next morning, but the public opinion was not what he had imagined. According to the Spanish newspaper El País, Antic was sacked by Atletico Madrid because he was unwilling to bear the blame for leading the team to relegation, and coupled with conflicts with Gil, the Serbian chose to leave. Marca reports that Atletico Madrid chose an inexperienced rookie because they have completely given up on the season. No renowned manager would want to take over a team that is about to be relegated, not even Zambrano from the reserve team. So Atletico Madrid chose a rookie with no experience. AS also believes that Atletico Madrid's management has given up all hope of avoiding relegation and has already begun searching for a suitable next head coach, requiring experience in managing a team in the Segunda División. Look at this, the Spanish second division, isn't this just preparing for relegation in the new season? As for that newbie named Yang something, he's just a transitional character. Who cares who he is? And there's ABC, Daily Sport, Mundo Deportivo. It's not just the Spanish media. Many European media outlets share this view, believing that Atletico Madrid hired Yang Hao because they had already given up on the season. The disease has progressed to the point of no return, there's no hope. Bringing Yang Hao to coach was intended to make him bear the historical infamy of the team's relegation, making him a perfect scapegoat. Don't believe me? Looking at the contract Atletico Madrid revealed, it's only for him to coach until the end of this season. Isn't that just a short-term contract? This poor kid's first job was leading Atletico Madrid to relegation. How is he supposed to survive in European football after that? Yang Hao was completely dumbfounded. This script is wrong. According to the writing style of football novels, shouldn't they attack as a group and question everything? What's going on now? Yang Hao was speechless. He calculated the time and made a special call to Pau Aleš, only to find out that no fans had gone to protest at the Majadahonda training base. Well, he was completely ignored. Yang Hao slumped onto the sofa like Guyu, a bitter smile on his face, feeling that he might have been presumptuous. Reality is never as dramatic as in novels. But soon he realized that it wasn't a lack of drama, but rather that he was too small and insignificant, and no one could see him at all. Even if someone sees it, they'll just glance at it and ignore it completely. No one would believe that Atletico Madrid would really trust a rookie with no experience to replace the renowned coach Antic. Thinking about it carefully, this is even worse than being questioned. Being questioned at least proves that they still have respect for Yang Hao. But now, they don't even see Yang Hao. Atletico Madrid's recruitment of an assistant coach for Yang Hao has been interpreted as preparation for the next season's Segunda División. Isn't that absurd? It felt like in their eyes, Yang Hao was invisible, dispensable, and they could easily replace him with anyone, the old lady who cleans the toilets, the old man who sweeps the streets, or even the dog that the security guard kept. Anyway, it's just for show. Of all the newspapers, only Le Monde mentioned Yang Hao's conversation with Florentino, emphasizing that Yang Hao tried to fool Florentino, but ended up talking big and was ridiculed and mocked by Florentino before being kicked out. Unexpectedly, Yang Hao, who was discarded by Florentino Perez, was treated as a valuable tool by Atletico Madrid. This particular passage in the report was written in a very sarcastic and biting way, which made Yang Hao feel annoyed. It's clearly that bastard Florentino who doesn't know what's good for him. Time will prove me right. Having read this far, Yang Hao was too lazy to continue reading. Since I'm being ignored, that's fine. I'll just walk up to you and let you get to know me again. Before the morning training session, Yang Hao met with Cesar Mendioto. From now on, this Atletico Madrid scout will serve as Yang Hao's assistant, mainly responsible for handling various internal team matters, especially coordination and communication with various departments. Mendioto struck Yang Hao as a rather pragmatic person, and the gift he gave Yang Hao was a carefully prepared scouting report on Barcelona. It looked a bit rough, probably prepared overnight. Yang Hao was very satisfied after reading it. The morning training was conducted by the coaching staff as planned. Yang Hao stood by without saying a word, observing and learning. After training, he called the first team players over for a talk one after another. But at noon, Perales brought him some very bad news. Beber's injury has worsened. The Czech midfielder was injured in the first half of the match against Deportivo La Coruña, when the team was down 0-3. During halftime, he mentioned it to Antic, who then substituted Baraja for Beber. The team doctor's diagnosis at the time was not very serious, it was just a minor strain. That's why he was able to keep training yesterday. But today, he couldn't hold on any longer. Beber is an Ironman, one of Atletico Madrid's most played players this season. From the League to the UEFA Cup to the Copa del Rey, including Czech national team matches, he has only missed 5 or 6 games, playing in all the others. Moreover, they all performed very well, keeping Baraja firmly on the bench. Baraja played as a starter in several rounds in the first half of the season, including 3 games when Beber was injured and performed well. Ranieri then tried to move Baraja to the right wing to replace Aguilera. However, the team suffered 2 consecutive crushing defeats against Athletic Bilbao and Deportivo La Coruña, both by 3 or 4 goals, so Baraja slunk back to the bench. Whether it's Ranieri or Antic, only Beber has remained consistently solid in Atletico Madrid's midfield. The news of Beber's injury cannot be kept secret, Cesar Mendioto said. The expressions on everyone's faces became even more serious. The game hasn't even started yet, and the locker room has only just started to stabilize a little, and now another key player has been lost. What are we going to do? Fresnedaso, Hugo Leal or Venturi can all play in this position. When Tulin was the first person Yang Hao rejected. This Italian midfielder was brought in by Ranieri from Lazio last summer for €3.6 million, but after playing only 3 or 4 league games, he was sidelined by Ranieri and never used again. He is now 32 years old, and technically speaking, he is no longer a suitable replacement for Beber. Portuguese prodigy Hugo Leal is young and excels at passing and playmaking, but defense is not his strong suit. Fresnedaso is actually the most suitable, with a height of 1.84 meters, excellent defensive ability, and he was a key player during Atletico Madrid's double-winning season. This season, he has made many substitute appearances. But how should I put it? The 95-96 season was Fresnedaso's peak, when he had a chance to enter the national team. However, his performance gradually declined afterward, and this season he has even lost his starting position, only appearing in garbage time or cup matches. How terrible was it? Yang Hao had researched this in his previous life. After Atletico Madrid was relegated, Fresnedaso couldn't even get a starting position in the Segunda División. Keep in mind, he's only 27 years old. Use Pablo Garcia. Yang Hao decided immediately. Pablo Garcia's late-blooming success was more a matter of choice. For example, he didn't get a chance at Atletico Madrid. After Atletico Madrid was relegated, he went to AC Milan, where he had even less of a chance. During that time, he was also loaned to Venezia. However, in the more competitive Serie A, Venezia, who were fighting relegation, were even less likely to give him a chance. He returned to La Liga in the summer of 2002, joined Osasuna, and transformed himself into one of the best defensive midfielders in La Liga before joining Real Madrid in the summer of 2005. Needless to say, this turned out to be another tragedy. Throughout Pablo Garcia's career, his ability and professional attitude were beyond reproach, it was just that he seemed to always be at odds with himself when it came to choosing a team. Of course, this was Yang Hao's previous life. Pablo Garcia is only 23 years old and is still a promising young player. He plays for Atletico Madrid's reserve team and is waiting for his chance to join the first team. If Yang Hao weren't a time traveler, he would never have placed such a crucial opportunity on Pablo Garcia, a player who had never even appeared on the first team. But he was well aware of Pablo Garcia's strength and potential. At least, it's no worse than Babur. Furthermore, they possess excellent passing and playmaking abilities. But Atletico Madrid's coaching staff were shocked by Yang Hao's decision. If the match against Barcelona is a do-or-die battle, is it worth betting on a young player like Pablo Garcia? Are you sure this isn't suicide? More importantly, the other defensive midfielder should be Balaja. In other words, with Babur injured, Atletico Madrid will have to start two non-regular players as a double pivot to face Barcelona. Isn't this just courting death? Many even believe that the team should not use the 4-2-3-1 formation, but should switch to a 4-4-2, with Valleran and Baraja partnering in central midfield. This would be more reliable than the double pivot of Baraja and Pablo Garcia. But this time, Yang Hao made the decision unilaterally. This matter is settled, no further discussion. You can arrange the targeted training for this afternoon. Many members of the coaching staff were speechless when they saw how determined he was. How can they compete with Barcelona with such a ridiculous attitude? Just you wait, when you lose badly, all you'll do is cry. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 15 The Invisible Man. Barcelona, Spain. After the afternoon training session, the Barcelona Sport City became quiet again. The light was still on in head coach Van Gaal's office. The day after tomorrow, his team will travel to Madrid to play against Atletico Madrid away. Van Gaal is not intimidated by Atletico Madrid, even when playing away. During his 3 seasons managing Atletico Madrid, he once lost 2-5 away from home, but that was after they had already secured the league title. Van Gaal sent a reserve team to the away game, and they were stunned by Vieri's brace and assist. Overall, however, Van Gaal's Barcelona still has a significant advantage over Atletico Madrid. He believes the same will happen this time. Especially after Antique's dismissal, Atletico Madrid had exhausted all their options and completely gave up on the season. Even so, Van Gaal still dared not let his guard down. Barcelona is not in a good position right now and desperately needs a victory, preferably a resounding one, to boost the team's morale. Ironically, the entire Barcelona team, and indeed perhaps the whole of European football, and even the world, knew nothing about Atletico Madrid's new head coach. They had no idea what he had done before, what he had accomplished, or what his exceptional qualities were. The only incident reported by the media was when he went to meet with Florentino, only to be ridiculed and mocked by him before being kicked out. God knows how he became Atletico Madrid's head coach. But precisely because of this, the whole world is very unfamiliar with this new Atletico Madrid manager. Nobody knows what tactics he prefers, what type of players he likes to use, or how he might arrange his formation. We can only guess. Van Gaal is a very controlling head coach, he doesn't like to guess. Especially since it's a guess without any scientific basis. Just as Van Gaal was having a headache, there was a knock on his office door from the outside. His assistant coach, Portuguese José Mourinho, walked in. This 37-year-old is very decisive and efficient. Although they often have disagreements, Van Gaal still relies on and trusts him a lot. When Van Gaal was coaching Barcelona, he had 3 assistants. Ronald Koeman and Gerard van der Leyen both went on to coach independently. Now only José Mourinho remains, and it's estimated that he will also go solo sooner or later. What's wrong, José? Van Gaal asked as he entered the room. Babur is injured. Really injured? Van Gaal was initially surprised, then delighted and smiled. Our scouts were right. He was substituted midway through the match against Deportivo La Coruña not to prepare for the Copa del Rey, but because he was injured. According to our reliable sources, he was injured and missed training that afternoon. Mourinho also looked very happy. This Babur is a formidable midfielder with excellent defensive abilities. Without him, how can Atletico Madrid possibly compete with Barcelona? After hearing this, Van Gaal was basically convinced. With 2 matches a week, every training session is crucial. No head coach would be foolish enough to deliberately let players skip training to create a smokescreen. Babur's absence from training can only prove that he is indeed injured. Then we need to change our plans slightly. As Van Gaal spoke, he walked back to his desk, not sitting down, but looking directly at a match chart in front of him, which displayed the starting lineups of both Barcelona and Atletico Madrid. Of course, this was just a guess by Van Gaal and his assistants. For the past 2 days, Atletico Madrid's training has followed the same schedule as under Antic, so the match will likely follow the same approach. For 42, with Molina in goal, the defense from left to right consisting of Capdevila, Santi Danaya, Carlos Gamarra and Gasper, the midfielders being Solari, Beltran, Babur and Aguilera, and the 2 strikers being Kiko and Hasselbank. But now, Van Gaal reached out and took the piece that represented Babel. Guess who he'll use? Baraja? Fresnardoso? Hugo Leal? Or Oscar Menez? Van Gaal rattled off several names in one breath, all of them Atletico Madrid midfielders, whom he knew by heart. This is his responsibility as head coach, he always studies his opponents very thoroughly. You seem to look down on Venturi. Mourinho suddenly said this. Van Gaal was immediately amused and burst out laughing, and the 2 of them laughed out loud. Babal's importance to Atletico Madrid's midfield is extraordinary, one could even say that Atletico Madrid's defense relies on Babal. Now that the Czech player is injured, how can Atletico Madrid compete with Barcelona? I'm thinking, should we play a bit more aggressively? Mourinho suggested. Van Gaal glanced at his assistant and shook his head inwardly. They're young after all, they're good at everything, except their ideas are sometimes too radical. At this point, the most important thing for Barcelona is to secure a victory to relieve the pressure the team is currently facing. They shouldn't always try to do something big all the time. Jose, I think if you ever have the opportunity to coach on your own, you'll definitely take more risks than I do, Van Gaal said with a smile. This wasn't the first time Van Gaal had said this, and Mourinho laughed along. He genuinely believes that his coaching philosophy contains the genes of attacking football. You're the type who enjoys watching the excitement and doesn't mind making things worse, but I can't, I have to consider the bigger picture. Seeing his smug smile, Van Gaal immediately chuckled and cursed again. Let Cocu start at centre-back, and Guardiola in the number 4 position. Let's try to finish the game in 1 leg away from home. This was also the result of Van Gaal's careful consideration. Barcelona's centre-backs are also at a disadvantage in terms of height, with Cocu being one of the taller ones. Moreover, as a versatile player, Cocu has excellent attacking ability. When he anchors the back line, he can effectively help the team move forward, suppress Atletico Madrid's overall formation, and allow the midfield and forward lines to better reap the rewards. Upon hearing this, Mourinho immediately nodded in agreement and wrote it down in his notebook. Still haven't found out anything about Atletico Madrid's new head coach? Van Gaal suddenly asked. Mourinho shook his head. No, there's not a single word from the media either, so they're just ignoring it. Van Gaal couldn't help but smile, it was rather strange that even the media couldn't get any information about it. I heard a reporter from Diario Sport mention it. It's strange that the person appeared out of nowhere. All we can find out so far is that he accidentally fell into the river in Madrid a few months ago and was rescued. Then, I tried to fool Florentino, but he kicked me out, and then this happened. Van Gaal nodded. Where did he take his coaching exam? Other things can be faked, but certificates can't be faked, right? You know what, his certificates are real. UEFA and the Coaches Association have records of them, but nobody remembers when such a person ever existed. Isn't that strange? What about the Cologne Sports Academy? Didn't they say he graduated from the sports management department? Van Gaal was even more puzzled. Yes, reporters have also inquired about him. He does exist and has indeed graduated, but nobody remembers him. Even the teachers aren't sure if he ever attended any classes. Upon hearing this, Van Gaal began to wonder if he was watching a horror movie. Isn't this person's presence a bit too weak? He was like an invisible man. If he hadn't been brought to the forefront this time, I doubt anyone would even remember that he existed. And then a reporter went to interview Florentino, and guess what Florentino's answer was? Don't you remember? Van Gaal burst into laughter. Yes, Florentino just said, who? I don't know this person. The two of them burst into laughter. Atletico Madrid's new manager is really lacking in presence, he's been ignored to this extent. But this further convinced all the media reporters that he really was the unlucky guy pushed out by Atletico Madrid, bearing the stigma of relegation. Otherwise, how do you explain why Atletico Madrid would appoint such a person as their head coach? I can already fully imagine the chaos and panic in Atletico Madrid's locker room right now. I think the Copa del Rey semi-final should be a sure thing. Mourinho looked intently at Van Gaal. During his 3 years managing Barcelona, Van Gaal won the La Liga title for 2 consecutive years. Although he has not made any breakthroughs in the Champions League, his achievements are still remarkable. However, he may not be able to snatch the league title from Deportivo La Coruña this year. If they can win the Copa del Rey, Van Gaal should be able to keep his job. At the very least, winning the championship every year is good enough. Van Gaal certainly understood Mourinho's meaning, but the unruly Dutchman was not interested in using this method to secure his position. But Mourinho. Jose, I heard that some Portuguese league teams are interested in you. Van Gaal suddenly asked. Mourinho didn't hide anything and nodded directly, I'm still considering it. Go ahead. There will be an opportunity for you to coach on your own after this season ends, so go. Van Gaal advised. He always felt that Mourinho was unwilling to be second to anyone, and that the reason he served as his assistant for 3 years was more because he was learning something. Once you've learned enough, you'll eventually have to go solo. I'll think about it some more, I'm really a little worried, Mourinho said with a wry smile. Van Gaal burst into laughter. I don't want him to end up like Atletico Madrid's new manager, do I? Mourinho immediately laughed again, no, I'm not that bad off yet. As an assistant coach for Barcelona, if he were to coach independently, he would at least be in a strong team in the Portuguese league, and he would definitely be able to take charge on his own. If Atletico Madrid's new manager is taking the blame, Mourinho might as well stay at Barcelona. While Van Gaal and Mourinho were joking about Atletico Madrid's coach, whose name they couldn't even recall, at the Barcelona training center, Yang Hao was still working overtime at the Majadahonda training ground. He just had a meeting with several first-team players who are about to start, listened to their opinions and ideas, and also explained his tactics and ideas for this game, as well as some tactical routines he wanted to use against Barcelona. After the meeting, he specifically kept Baraja and Pablo Garcia behind and gave them private instructions. Especially Pablo Garcia. You both said you were willing to risk your lives for me, so now, the opportunity to fulfill your promise has arrived. Yang Hao stared at the two men and said fiercely. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 16 A Perfect Start. Tuesday, April 11, 2000, Calderón Stadium, Madrid, Spain. In the first leg of the Copa del Rey semi-final, Atletico Madrid will host Barcelona. This is a legacy from Ranieri. In February, the Tinkerer led Atletico Madrid to the Copa del Rey semi-finals. However, he couldn't hold on until today. The Calderón Stadium also welcomed 48,000 Atletico Madrid fans, as their opponent this time was the formidable Barcelona. Matches between top teams always attract a lot of fans to the stadium. This also marked the return of the Hill father and son, Cerezo, and others to the presidential stand at the Calderón Stadium after nearly 4 months. The fans in the stadium gave the elder Hill a warm round of applause to celebrate his return. Even though things have escalated to this point this season, Gil still holds a significant place in the hearts of Atletico Madrid fans. Everyone seemed convinced that he could still help the team turn things around and avoid relegation. Accompanying the Hill father and son was the new sporting director, Paulo Futre, who also received a warm welcome from the fans. He is one of Atletico Madrid's most beloved players. But the fans couldn't see that the Atletico Madrid executives cheering in the presidential stands all had frosty expressions, clearly pessimistic about the match. Their chances of winning were already slim, and Baber was injured before the match. How could they possibly play? Barcelona's recent form has indeed been poor, but that's precisely what makes it so troublesome. Because Barcelona also desperately needs a victory, they will not be complacent, but will go all out. Can Atletico Madrid stop a Barcelona team going all out? Before the match, no one wanted to make such negative comments, but that doesn't mean they didn't think so in their hearts. Yesterday evening, Yang Hao did not attend the pre-match press conference, but instead had Cesar Mendio announce the 16-man roster for the competition. Yes, the Copa del Rey only allows 5 substitutes, with a maximum of 3 substitutions. The general consensus is that it was unremarkable and lacked any surprises. Old Hill sat imposingly in his seat in the VIP section, his own private spot. He noticed his son beside him looking nervous and anxious, a hint of disappointment flashing in his eyes. In the past, he would definitely have said something to him, or even criticized him harshly. But this time, he only gave a brief reminder. The live stream camera could sweep over us at any time. Hill paused for a moment, then took several deep breaths, trying to appear calm. In this respect, he is still far behind his father. You must believe in your choices, whether they succeed or fail. Old Hill rarely spoke to his son like this, and young Hill was indeed a little unaccustomed to it. After looking deeply at his father, he nodded heavily. He learned his lesson. Kiko is not in the starting lineup. When the Barcelona coaching staff received Atletico Madrid's starting lineup, both Van Gaal and Mourinho were somewhat surprised. Goalkeeper, Molina. Defense, Capdevila, Santi Denaya, Carlos Gamara and Gasper. Midfield, Pablo Garcia and Barajado behind, up front Solari, Vallerin and Aguilera. Center forward, Hasselbank. It's easy to deduce Atletico Madrid's lineup for tonight from the starting 11. The new head coach wants to play a 4-2-3-1 formation. Still struggling in its death throes, Mourinho chuckled. Atletico Madrid has never played a double defensive midfielder tactic before. From Sachai to Antic, and then from Ranieri to Antic, they have basically used a 4-4-2 formation. Now they have suddenly switched to a 4-2-3-1 formation, which is quite a change. Besides, while there aren't many teams in La Liga that use 2 defensive midfielders, it's not uncommon, such as Deportivo La Coruña. Irurita's team plays a 4-2-3-1 formation, but that's because they have 2 very strong defensive midfielders, Mauro Silva and Flavio Conceição. These 2 Brazilian players are the best performing defensive midfielders in La Liga this season. Celta Vigo, with Victor Fernandes, also plays a 4-2-3-1 formation, and they also have top La Liga defensive midfielders like Makelele and Salades. Does he think that teams playing 4-2-3-1 have performed well this season, and he wants to learn from them? Mourinho speculated. The Portuguese really didn't take Yang Hao seriously. The position of professional head coach requires a great deal of experience and tactical acumen, and it also tests a person's management skills. It is impossible for such a person to appear out of thin air. The 4-2-3-1 formation was designed for defense from the moment it was created, Van Gaal said calmly. The double defensive midfield setup was created to limit superstar attacking midfielders like Maradona. Generally speaking, there are 2 approaches. One is to bring down one of the strikers, which is actually a variation of the 4-4-2 formation. The other is to remove one striker and add a defensive midfielder. The 2 approaches may seem the same, but in reality, the tactics employed on the field are completely different. Then he should be the latter type, Mourinho said. Van Gaal also felt that this should be the case. Isn't this Pablo Garcia's first appearance? Yes, I trained with the first team before. He partners with Baraja, and this young head coach wants to improve the defense. Mourinho knew Van Gaal all too well. His eyes darted around, and he asked, then wheel. A strong opening attack. Van Gaal smiled confidently. This was the first time Yang Hao had stood in a stadium with so many people. Previously, he could only sit in the stands, just a drop in the ocean among nearly 50,000 people. But now, he stands on the field, the center of attention. This still put a lot of psychological pressure on him, making him a little nervous. Especially when he looked around the stadium and saw a sea of black heads everywhere, all he could hear was the deafening shouts of the fans. He finally understood the line from the novels of his past life, "Those with a weak heart would wet themselves in fear." Fortunately, he had finished urinating before he came. "You should go and meet with Van Gaal," Cesar Mendiador advised. Yang Hao then remembered and hurriedly walked towards the away team's coaching bench. Van Gaal had been keeping an eye on him. When he saw Yang Hao approaching, he showed no expression, simply shook hands with him briefly, and said hello, that was all. He is a world-class coach, and naturally he has the pride of a great coach. Yang Hao felt looked down upon, but didn't care too much. Instead, he noticed Mourinho next to Van Gaal. After shaking hands with the Dutchman, he even went over to shake hands with the translator as well. "Welcome to Calderon, Jose." "Thank you." Mourinho paused slightly. Clearly, he was wondering if this new friend was being too polite. "Do I know you well?" Yang Hao was in a really good mood after shaking hands with Van Gaal and Mourinho. He even looked onto the pitch and saw Kluivert, Figo, Rivaldo, Xavi, Guardiola, Cocu, Puyol. Especially Guardiola. Look at his thick hair now, who would have thought that he would become the world-famous bald Guardiola? However, to be honest, when he wasn't bald yet, he lacked that wise and refined feeling. "Now that I'm here, how can Guatu still be bald?" But soon, Yang Hao put all his wild thoughts aside. Because the match has started. Despite playing away from home, Barcelona launched an early attack right from the start of the match. Rivaldo on the left and Figo on the right, in particular, were both very active. This made Yang Hao secretly amused. People outside are saying that Rivaldo and Van Gaal are at odds. But sometimes, the more conflicts arise, the better the players perform. Barcelona established an advantage from the start and quickly created their first threatening shot, which came from Rivaldo. It must be said that Rivaldo's performance was indeed significantly affected by playing on the left wing with his left foot. On this point, his criticism of Van Gaal was truly well-founded. Of course, this doesn't mean that Van Gaal was necessarily wrong. The head coach considers issues from the perspective of the entire team, while the players consider themselves. These two are sometimes in agreement, sometimes they can coexist peacefully, and sometimes they are in opposition. Yang Hao also noticed that Bogard and Puyol were both pushing relatively high up the pitch, and Barcelona's entire backline was also pushing forward, clearly to provide more support to the midfield and attack. Kluivert was still very dominant in the attacking third, and Atletico Madrid's two centre-backs couldn't gain any advantage against him at all. This led to Barcelona playing very smoothly at the start, with both wings and the middle playing very dynamically. In the 12th minute of the match, Rivaldo made a diagonal run down the left flank, drawing a foul from Gasper and winning a free kick for Barcelona. The Brazilian striker took the penalty himself, sending a precise, curved shot into the penalty area. Santi Denia won the first header and cleared the ball. Guardiola, who had been lurking on the perimeter, got there first and passed the ball to Figo on the right wing. Figo received the ball close to the right sideline and, before Capdevila could catch up, delivered an elegant cross with his right foot, sending the ball back into the penalty area. Inside the penalty area, Kluivert was ready to pounce on the ball, but Atletico Madrid centre-backs also made a defensive effort. But in the midst of the scramble, Cocu broke through first and headed the ball into the net from close range, giving Barcelona the lead. A collective sigh of regret echoed throughout the Calderon Stadium. They conceded a goal within the first 12 minutes. How can they possibly play this game? Van Gaal and Mourinho cheered and hugged excitedly in front of the away team's bench, both looking very satisfied with the start of the season. Both the process and the goals scored made it a perfect start. Yang Hao glanced at the away team's coaching bench, then turned back to the field, clearly annoyed by the goal conceded earlier. "Their individual abilities are far too lacking," Mendiadoro said helplessly. Gasper couldn't stop Rivaldo at all, so he had no choice but to foul him. But Yang Hao didn't see it that way. He went straight to the sidelines and called over Balaha, who was nearby. "What's wrong with you? I didn't see you go to protect me." Baraja pointed to the middle of the field, then looked at the angry head coach, and immediately realized where his problem lay. The team is now playing with two defensive midfielders, he should move over there to help Gasper defend against Rivaldo. Otherwise, why use two defensive midfielders? This was something the head coach repeatedly emphasized before the game, but during the match, some habits still couldn't be broken. "Let me tell you, if it happens again, I'll make a substitution. Don't think I wouldn't dare to make a substitution in the first half." Baraja nodded hurriedly, but as he turned to leave, Yang Hao called him back. "By the way, remind Pablo Garcia that Figo is also very active on his side. And another thing, loosen up, don't be so tense, kick freely." Yang Hao encouraged. Watching Baraja return to the field, Yang Hao gestured to Vailron, signaling him to stay calm and patiently look for an opportunity. "The game is still early, conceding one goal is no big deal." Belron nodded in agreement. "Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading." End of this chapter. Chapter 17 is here. It's a tie. Barcelona had a very smooth start, with Van Gaal's team scoring in the first 12 minutes. This was an opportunity created by a free kick on the left side of the attacking third, and Figo assisted Cocu to head the ball into the goal. We can see that after the change of manager, Atletico Madrid adopted a two-defensive midfielder tactic, but their defense is still as weak as ever, especially in protecting the two flanks. Whether it's Rivaldo or Figo, they are both top superstars with exceptional individual abilities. Against such stars, one-on-one defense won't work, you have to pack them together. But Atletico Madrid still did a very bad job in this regard. There are also two centre-backs who simply can't contain Kluivert, which has been a long-standing problem for Atletico Madrid. The game has restarted. Barcelona still controls the ball and is actively launching attacks. Given the current trend, Atletico Madrid is very likely to suffer a crushing defeat at home tonight. Is there still no improvement? Even after Barcelona scored, they continued to launch attacks on Atletico Madrid. Old Hill, standing in the stands, remained calm but asked the question that had been on his mind. No one around him could tell whether he was asking a question or muttering to himself. Little Hill frowned, and after listening to his father's words, he hesitated for a long time in great anxiety before finally saying, "I believe him. If he says he has a way, then he must have a way." In the end, Hill's expression was resolute and left no room for doubt. Paulo Futre and Cerezo both knew that Little Hill trusted Yang Hao implicitly, almost to the point of being brainwashed. God knows why he trusted Yang Hao so much. Old Hill looked deeply at his son, grunted twice, and said, "I hope he won't disappoint you." After acquiring Atletico Madrid in 1992, Gil appointed his son, Gil, as the general manager. A young man who had just graduated from school and had little work experience was thrown into the big melting pot of professional football. Old Hill's intention was clear, to let him train and improve in this complex environment. Years have passed, and he is still very dissatisfied with Hill. This son is nothing like him. How can one succeed when one is indecisive, lacks decisiveness, and is hesitant and follows the rules? Looking back, the most outrageous thing Hill did over the years was his insistence on replacing Antic with Yang Hao. Everyone thought it was crazy and incomprehensible, but Old Hill was actually quite happy. This kid seems to be starting to get it. This is a world for madmen, honest people are destined to suffer. Atletico Madrid is important to him, but the family heir is more important. He is 67 years old. Puyol, you're pushing too far forward. Come back a little. After a Barcelona attack failed, Van Gaal shouted at Puyol. In that attack, Puyol moved forward and outmaneuvered Figo, taking the lead on the right flank. Van Gaal realized the danger. Because Atletico Madrid's left flank, with Capdevila and Solari, is also very strong offensively. In Van Gaal's tactical system, fullbacks can never be ahead of wingers, this is a problem with the defensive system. Figo is not a typical winger. He doesn't have lightning speed. He relies more on receiving the ball on the wing and using his technique, rhythm, and passing to create breakthroughs and crosses, thereby creating threats. Puyol, though young, is very fast. He got too excited and overtook them. Atletico Madrid's left flank is being suppressed, and they can't create any threats, Mourinho laughed from the side. It's been 20 minutes, and Atletico Madrid hasn't had a single shot on goal. Several counterattacks were launched down the left flank, but Puyol was very aware of his defensive positioning and was also very fast. Then there's Guardiola, who always stays back on the right side after Puyol comes on, plugging Puyol's gaps and making it difficult for Atletico Madrid's left flank to pose a threat. As for Atletico Madrid's right flank, Gasper was already having a hard time marking Rivaldo, so how could he possibly have the energy to move forward? Aguilera was forced to track back, which prevented Atletico Madrid from creating any real threat on their right flank. What's different about Atletico Madrid today is that their players are more active. Hasselbank has repeatedly participated in pressing in the attacking third, and Valleran, whether he's moving to the wing or dropping back, is more diligent than usual. Mourinho couldn't help but laugh again as he said this. I think we should be able to win by more than 3 goals today. After hearing this, Van Gaal smiled at his assistant and said, "You're just looking for trouble." That's the good thing about being an assistant coach, you don't have to take responsibility for wins or losses. However, if we can score another goal before the first half, we'll have a chance, Van Gaal analyzed. He said the chance was winning by more than 3 goals. Whether it was the coaches on the sidelines, the fans in the stands, or the viewers in front of their TVs, all they saw was Barcelona dominating Atletico Madrid and having the upper hand on the field. But on the pitch, especially for Guardiola, who plays as the team's key link in the number 4 position, his feelings are completely different from everyone else's. The observant Barcelona captain noticed a detail that no one on the pitch noticed, and no one off the pitch would see, Valleran's positioning. Barcelona employed a typical 4-3-3 formation, with a triangular midfield, Guardiola dropping deep, and Gabri and Xavi in the center. Atletico Madrid employed a 4-2-3-1 formation, with Valleran positioned directly against Guardiola. So every time Guardiola got the ball, Valleran would press him. But every time Atletico Madrid won the ball, Valleran would move to the left behind Gabri and Xavi's line. This is a very clear signal that they want to support the attack on the left flank. Guardiola has set a rule for himself: he cannot let Valleran get the ball. He was well aware of Valleran's abilities. Once he got the ball, his technique and passing skills could very well create a threat. Atletico Madrid's counter-attacks also intentionally targeted the left flank, with Capdevila and Solari being very active on that side. Surprisingly, Pablo Garcia, a left-footed player, also leans towards this side. In other words, sometimes Atletico Madrid will field 4 players on the left flank. Is this a signal that they're going to launch a counter-attack down the left flank? Guardiola looked at Puyol, who was completely unleashing himself on the wing and constantly pushing forward, and thought to himself that it was normal for him to think that way. So he frequently moved to that side, while reminding Cocu and De Boer to watch out for Atletico Madrid's left flank. Guardiola didn't need to remind them of this, because Hasselbank also actively moved to the left, forcing Barcelona's centre-backs to follow suit. In a one-on-one situation, neither Cocu nor De Boer were confident they could contain Hasselbank. 20 minutes into the game, Guardiola noticed that Atletico Madrid had lost the initial chaos. The players seem to have gradually adapted to the rhythm of the game and the tactics of both sides, and they have begun to play with some structure. In particular, their attacking coordination on the left flank began to pose a threat. This forced Guardiola to frequently call out to Puyol and Xavi in front of him, while also moving more actively towards that side. Although a gut feeling told him that something was wrong. But the game was so intense and fast-paced that he didn't have time to think about what was wrong. "They're here." Yang Hao stood patiently on the sidelines the whole time. When he saw Pablo Garcia and Capdevila team up to double-team Figo, the Uruguayan midfielder preemptively poked the ball away from Figo's feet to the left wing, causing the Portuguese player to fall to the ground, but the referee Mendes did not blow his whistle. Yang Hao immediately became excited and clenched his fists with all his might. Pablo Garcia intercepted the ball, which was in front of Capdevila. The Spanish left-back made a quick forward run, sending a long ball forward along the left flank, drawing the attention of Puyol and Xavi. Puyol didn't immediately get into position, and Xavi quickly moved to the wing because they both knew that Figo wouldn't track back to defend. After Capdevila crossed the halfway line, he saw Valleran running over, right outside the angle between Puyol and Xavi, gesturing for Capdevila to pass the ball. The Spanish left-back made a quick decision and passed the ball directly to them. Just as Valleran ran over, the ball arrived. But Guardiola also arrived. Valleran stopped the ball, couldn't hold on to it, and quickly passed it to the left wing. This time, they went directly to Solari. Solari sprinted down the left flank and caught up with Valleran's pass, only to see Cocu react quickly and rush over. The Argentine, assessing his own speed, wasn't confident he could easily get past Cocu and cross the ball, so he stopped immediately, feigning a cut inside the penalty area to find Hasselbank for a combination play. At this point, both Cocu and Guardiola gathered around. Just then, Solari passed the ball back to the unmarked Valleran. In the open space, when Valleran controlled the ball, Guardiola in front of him, Xavi and Gabri on both sides behind him all rushed towards him at the same time, but after a slight adjustment, the Spanish midfielder made a move to pass the ball forward to find Hasselbank. After a feint, Valleran passed the ball to the right flank. Aguilera, who was just on the right side of the midfield line, suddenly ran over. After receiving a pass from Valleran, before Bogard could get close, the short but very agile Aguilera dribbled the ball sideways, just avoiding Bogard, and rushed towards the right side of the penalty arc. After seeing Bogard being dribbled past by Aguilera, De Boer couldn't hold back and chose to intercept. Although Aguilera is a right-footed player, his left foot is also excellent. Before De Boer could get close, he delivered a through pass with his left foot. The ball was passed between De Boer and Bogard into the right side of the penalty area. Hasselbank was under close marking from Cocu the whole time, but when Aguilera brought the ball over, he first ran sideways, pretending to support Aguilera. After De Boer pressed him, he suddenly changed direction and cut diagonally behind De Boer. Aguilera's pass landed perfectly on the right side of the penalty area. Hasselbank caught up with the ball, controlled it, adjusted, and before Cocu could pounce, unleashed a powerful shot with his right foot. This was a typical Hasselbank shot, full of power and speed, with a unique violent aesthetic. The football flew with lightning speed, directly into the goal guarded by Hesp. 1-1. It's a draw. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 18. Goal scorer, Baraja. Goal. In the 27th minute, Atletico Madrid's first shot of the match came from their top scorer, Dutchman Hasselbank. That was a very, very powerful shot. Hasselbank unleashed a spectacular and powerful shot, helping Atletico Madrid successfully equalize the score. 1-1. Yeah. On the sidelines, Yang Hao jumped up excitedly when he saw Hasselbank take a shot. His fists, which had been clenched tightly, were thrown out wildly, like a boxer beating an enemy. The entire Calderón Stadium, filled with 48,000 Atletico Madrid fans, erupted in gasps of surprise, followed by a deafening roar of cheers and thunderous applause. 1-1. Atletico Madrid have successfully equalized. Atletico Madrid's players were equally excited, rushing off the pitch to catch up with Hasselbank and celebrate together on the sidelines. Even goalkeeper Molina was running back and forth on his own goal line, cheering and shouting, venting his excitement. After being suppressed by my opponent for almost half an hour, I can finally vent my frustration. After his initial excitement subsided, Yang Hao quickly turned around and gave Mendiadoro, Perizarro, and others a high five. He saw surprise on everyone's face, a look of utter disbelief. Yes, before that goal, none of them thought Atletico Madrid had a chance to win this game. Especially after conceding a goal to the opponent in the first 12 minutes, they completely lost confidence. But now, Atletico Madrid has scored, and the score is equalized. The competition has only just begun. Yang Hao said with a loud laugh. He completely ignored what his assistants were thinking, as if he would never tell them why the 4-2-3-1 formation would still be used by many teams for many years to come, even before he traveled through time. It's not because it's so advanced, but because it's accessible to the general public. If Yang Hao had superstars like Figo, Rivaldo, and Kluivert, and a single defensive midfielder like Guardiola, then without a doubt, he could just go for a 4-3-3 formation. But the question is, does Atletico Madrid have the resources to play a 4-3-3 formation? Do they have the ability to play attacking football? The answer is no. If they really do that, Atletico Madrid will probably get riddled with holes by their opponents. Not to mention, Atletico Madrid has never had the DNA to play a 4-3-3 formation, and the players are not used to it. However, the 4-2-3-1 formation is different. The high pressing and pressing philosophy had already laid a certain foundation during Sachai's season, and it was not difficult for the players to understand and adapt to it. More importantly, in Yang Hao's previous life, players like Valorant and Baraja reached the peak of their careers using the 4-2-3-1 formation. In this situation, Atletico Madrid's 4-2-3-1 formation is the optimal solution. Leaving his astonished assistant behind, Yang Hao went straight to the sidelines and shouted at the Atletico Madrid players who had just celebrated their goal and were walking back, "Steady up the pace, take it slow, keep playing like this. Come on. Come on. We need to score again. Screw Barca." By the end, Yang Hao was clearly in a frenzy, and he even started swearing. The fourth official in front of him immediately turned around and gave Yang Hao a stern look. The team had just scored a goal, and Yang Hao realized he had misspoke, so he immediately laughed and turned back. "This kid really doesn't know any rules," Mourinho said with a sneer. "It's just a goal, isn't it? Why are you so smug?" But Van Gaal still looked serious. His keen sense of smell, honed through years of coaching, told him that there are no goals in football without a reason, there is always a cause for everything, and the opponent must have done something right. So what exactly did this rookie and Atletico Madrid do right? Counter-attack. Van Gaal hasn't figured it out yet, but the game has already restarted. Having conceded a goal, the Barcelona players became somewhat more cautious. This can be considered a reminder to them. But soon they noticed that the Atletico Madrid players on the other side were gaining morale quickly, especially these players, whose eyes had become much more determined. As professional players, the Barcelona players know all too well what's going on here. They have a clear direction and goals, they know exactly what they should do and how to do it. When De Boer rushed out of the 30-meter zone to receive the ball, Hasselbank immediately pounced on him, which startled the Dutch centre-back. As a national team teammate, Hasselbank's physical strength is something De Boer is very wary of. So he immediately passed the ball across to Cocu. Hasselbank made a turn midway and ran towards Cocu, which forced Cocu to pass the ball to Puyol on the right wing. Now the Dutch striker stopped running and instead strolled leisurely between Cocu and De Boer. Almost simultaneously, Solari on the left rushed forward, heading straight for Puyol. Valorant also ran forward a couple of steps as Guardiola retreated. This immediately disrupted Puyol's passing lanes, forcing the Barcelona defender to pass the ball back to goalkeeper Hesp. A round of enthusiastic applause erupted from the Calderón Stadium. Atletico Madrid executed a very good defensive play, forcing Barcelona to pass the ball back. Barcelona has a strong ball control mentality and plays with great patience. Even when they pass the ball back, they immediately reorganize and pass it out again. But Atletico Madrid's defense is quite interesting. When the ball was within 30 meters of Barcelona's goal, none of Atletico Madrid's players pressed it. But once the ball goes out of that range, Atletico Madrid players will aggressively press forward. As the ball retreated, Atletico Madrid's players followed suit. After 2 or 3 unsuccessful attempts to advance, Cocu launched a long ball from the backfield, sending it forward to find Kluivert. The Dutch centre-forward was very dominant in the attacking third, but after winning the ball, he found that there were hardly any teammates around. Figo was on the right wing and Rivaldo was on the left wing, but the attacking trident was cut apart. Although Kluivert has a physical advantage, he wasn't confident he could take on Atletico Madrid's 2 centre-backs single-handedly, so he could only pass the ball back to midfield. This is where the role of the 2 defensive midfielders comes into play. Baraja and Pablo Garcia were like a wall, making it difficult for Xavi and Gabri to move forward. Xavi finally managed to pass the ball to the left wing and get it to Rivaldo, but this time Baraja had learned his lesson and immediately rushed to the wing, teaming up with Gasper to double-team Rivaldo. Ultimately, the attack ended with Gasper sliding the ball out of bounds, giving Barcelona a throw-in. But compared to before, this defense was much better. At least throughout the entire process, Atletico Madrid proceeded in an orderly manner. Atletico Madrid's players are starting to find their rhythm and regain their confidence. Van Gaal is a former professional player, he can roughly guess what's going on with the players just by watching a game. He understands the Atletico Madrid players' mentality all too well. On the contrary, Mourinho, who has not played professional football much, does not know much about professional players, especially those in top leagues. Was it that goal just now? Mourinho asked. Van Gaal shook his head. It's that rookie. Him. Mourinho was quite surprised. Turning his head to look at the home team's coaching bench, he found Yang Hao still standing on the sidelines, intently watching the game. Do you really think that a strong team can win by tying a dog to the coaching bench? Van Gaal has always been dismissive of such statements from the media. The head coach's biggest role is to give the players confidence. Now, the Atletico Madrid players feel it. This rookie's tactics are working, especially their defense tonight. Tonight, Atletico Madrid's defensive tactics really impressed Van Gaal, especially their targeted formation in the 30-meter zone and around the halfway line. After 20 minutes, it became more difficult for Barcelona to get the ball across the halfway line, and their attacks lost the threat they had at the start of the game. This is not a good sign. Just as Van Gaal frowned, pondering a solution, Barcelona passed the ball back to the center line. Gabri received the ball and was about to turn around when he heard Guardiola's warning. Careful. Before he could even hear clearly, Baraja had already rushed up to him. The 1.77-meter-tall Spanish midfielder, full of menace, launched a vicious tackle and snatched the ball from Gabri's feet. The key point is that after Baraja tackled the ball, he got up and quickly chased after it. Gabriel could vaguely hear him muttering, "Fight! Fight! I'm going to fight!" The Barcelona midfielder was completely stunned. After Baraja caught up with the ball, he quickly passed it to Valleran in front. Valleran made a move to the left, intending to find Solari on the left wing and Hasselbank on the left side of the penalty area to combine, which made Guardiola feel threatened. But unexpectedly, this was just another smokescreen. Beltran was clearly looking to the left, and his entire body was facing to the left, so heaven knows how he saw Aguilera on the right. The ball reached Aguilera's feet, and the Spanish right wing quickly cut past Bogart and dribbled directly into the penalty area. De Boer was alarmed and immediately blocked the pass, with Cocu following closely behind, fearing that Aguilera's cross would find Hasselbank, which would be another huge threat. After Aguilera broke into the penalty area, the defensive pressure on him lessened considerably, but what he saw and felt was that he was surrounded by 3 Barcelona defenders. His routes to the goal and the middle were completely blocked, leaving him no gaps whatsoever. With no other option, Aguilera could only protect the ball. She turned her head slightly and caught a glimpse of a red and white figure rushing towards her out of the corner of her eye. Who's so clever? Aguilera didn't think twice and passed the ball back to the right side of the penalty arc. Then, the man rushed over, met Aguilera's pass, and without even stopping, swung his right foot and unleashed a powerful shot. The ball, like a bullet, shot out at extremely high speed, heading straight for the left side of the goal. Goalkeeper Hesp was standing near the right post and had no chance of stopping it. That long-range shot found the back of the net. Everyone was utterly shocked, and only at this moment did they turn their attention back to the edge of the penalty area. Goal scorer, Ruben Baraja. Please vote with monthly tickets, follow the story, add it to your favorites, and recommend it. End of this chapter. Chapter 19. Tonight, we will utterly crush Barcelona. Yang Hao was completely absorbed in the competition, experiencing its ups and downs. But for some reason, the moment he saw Baraja lift his foot, he had a very strong premonition. The ball is in. It really was a very special feeling. That shot seemed to gather all of Baraja's strength and represent the culmination of a lifetime's effort. If fate truly exists, then Yang Hao can be certain that this shot will rewrite Baraja's future destiny, at least setting him on a completely different path from the previous 20 years. So, he got in. Atletico Madrid have turned the tide, winning 2-1. The entire Calderón Stadium was erupting in wild cheers, with 48,000 Atletico Madrid fans shouting Baraja's name at the top of their lungs, cheering and singing for him. Baraja was so excited that he rushed off the field and finally knelt down in the corner area. His teammates rushed over one after another, surrounding him and celebrating his goal. After delivering a series of powerful punches, Yang Hao laughed heartily, turned around, and gave Mendiador and his assistants a high five. Finally, he looked back at the field and met Baraja's gaze. The Spanish midfielder excitedly raised his clenched right fist towards Yang Hao, showing that he was full of energy at that moment. Yang Hao gave him a thumbs up from afar, showing his approval. We turned the tide. Did you see that? Dad, we turned it around. I told you, Yang Hao could definitely do it, he would never lie to me. Hill was in the stands, his excitement beyond measure, even more so than the players on the field and Yang Hao on the sidelines. Cerezo and Paulo Futre were both all smiles, clearly surprised that the team had scored 2 goals in less than 10 minutes, but mostly full of praise. "Our new coach is quite capable," Paul Futre praised. "Whether there's any substance or not, just watch the game to find out. Yang Hao may not be good at training, but he is capable of communicating with and managing players. Most importantly, his tactical thinking is very distinctive, even advanced." His 4-2-3-1 formation wasn't the typical 4-2-3-1 we see now, it was a formation tailored to the characteristics of Atletico Madrid's players. As a result, Valleran and Baraja were both activated, and Aguilera clearly performed better. "Yes, he told me that this tactic best utilizes our players' strengths, but he also said that it's not the best yet. If any players want to leave this summer, we'll let them go. He's confident that he can build a more competitive roster for our team in one summer." After a pause, Hill seemed to feel that he had gone too far, and immediately added, "Of course, he needs more time." Cerezo and Paulo Futre both laughed. Little Hill is now a die-hard fan of Yang Hao. Paul Futre was even thinking that he should find an opportunity to learn from Yang Hao and see what kind of spell he had cast on Little Hill to make him so open and honest. But just as everyone was celebrating, Old Hill remained expressionless and said coldly, "The game isn't over yet, it's too early to say anything now." It was like a bucket of cold water being poured over Hill's head. That's not wrong. The first half isn't over yet, so it's too early to say we've won. However, Old Hill looked at his son again, paused, and then asked, "Have you found an assistant coach for him yet?" Hill's eyes lit up immediately, and he replied with obvious delight, "I found a few and invited them all over. They should be watching the game from the stands right now." Seeing him like this, Old Hill immediately snorted again, "Calm down, be more composed, don't be so impulsive." For some reason, Little Hill felt a little resentful and muttered, "You even hit someone before." Old Hill was immediately stunned and speechless. Cerezo and Paulo Futre pretended not to hear the conversation between the father and son, and were focused on watching the game. Actually, they both knew it very well. Old Hill was focused on grooming his son, Young Hill, to succeed him, but Young Hill's personality and way of doing things were completely different from Old Hill's. To the ruthless Old Hill, this was seen as weakness and indecisiveness. Gradually, as he received more scolding and criticism, Little Hill became less confident and even gave up. "That's just how I am, do whatever you want." But the more he acted this way, the more dissatisfied Old Hill became, and the more he liked to criticize and target him. Just like now, everyone could see that Old Hill was clearly satisfied with the team's performance in this game, but he just had to say those kinds of things to provoke Little Hill. That's why they say fathers and sons are often sworn enemies. When the match resumed, in a corner of the presidential stand, 5 people were huddled together, discussing the game between Atletico Madrid and Barcelona that night, especially the 4-2-3-1 formation that Atletico Madrid had used. These 5 people all have one thing in common, they all have experience coaching in the Spanish Second Division or even the Spanish First Division. As the match progressed, both sides had essentially played their part, especially Atletico Madrid, whose 2 goals in the comeback against Barcelona ignited the passion at the Calderón Stadium, making the entire stadium incredibly exciting. Among the 5 people's discussion, the most frequently mentioned topic was counter-attacking. They were all familiar with Atletico Madrid's 4-2-3-1 formation tonight, and the double defensive midfield setup was not surprising, they simply felt that the head coach knew how to use his players well. In particular, Pablo Garcia, who is left-footed, plays on the left side, while Baraja plays on the right side, this positioning effectively brings out the players' strengths. And Valleran. Atletico Madrid's 2 goals seemed to have nothing to do with Valleran, but in fact, both of the chances were created by passes from Valleran, specifically to Aguilera. This is definitely not a coincidence. Atletico Madrid's new manager seems to really like attacking down the flanks. One of them was clearly quite well known in the group, he wasn't very old, but his words were respected by the others. Attacking from the flanks? As you all saw just now, Valleran was mostly faking attacks on the left flank while actually passing the ball to the right flank. Aguilera is short but very agile and has good footwork, while Bogard is tall and big, which puts him at a disadvantage in one-on-one situations. When everyone heard what he said, they immediately felt that it made sense. The 2 attacks followed the same pattern. The first time, Aguilera made a direct left-footed pass to Hasselbank, and the second time, the Atletico Madrid captain broke into the penalty area but couldn't get a chance and was forced to pass back, which Baraja happened to make a run into. Looking back, both attacks involved a line connecting the two flanks. Juanma, I think his 4-2-3-1 formation is similar to the style of play you used when you coached Cultural Leones, but it's not as aggressive as yours. The forwards aren't pushed as far forward, and the defense is about the same, which makes the entire front and back line more compact. The benefits of doing this are obvious. Hasselbank gets more space, Kluivert has a hard time getting the ball in his most dangerous areas, and he is also forced to cut off from Rivaldo and Figo. The coach named Juanma chuckled, that's what makes him smart. To be able to devise such a tactic based on Atletico Madrid's player configuration after only 3 days in office, that's impressive. Everyone nodded in agreement. Just one look at this match, and Atletico Madrid's technical and tactical level of play, it hardly looks like a team led by a rookie. Putting everything else aside, can a novice even discern the characteristics and strengths of Valleran, Baraja, and Pablo Garcia? Barcelona is probably in for a tough time tonight, someone chuckled. Van Gaal's unruly nature has made him unpopular with many in Spanish football. Van Gaal probably didn't expect this either, Juanma murmured. Everyone nodded in agreement. Let alone Van Gaal, even they, before tonight's game, didn't they, like everyone else, look down on Atletico Madrid's rookie head coach? In fact, if they weren't forced into a corner, who would be willing to be an assistant to such a rookie? But after watching tonight's game, they had to admit that their perspective had completely changed. I am more interested in his strategy of attacking the flanks, Juanma said with a smile. Why? Juanma laughed even harder, his gaze involuntarily falling on a certain player on the field. I have a friend who has been poisoned by flank attacks for many years, so he always tells me that he firmly believes that flank attacks will become the mainstream trend of future football, but he doesn't like 4231 at all because it's too conservative. Everyone smiled. The 42-31 formation is indeed a bit conservative, or rather, it's inherently a conservative and stability-seeking tactic. However, they also firmly believe that this tactic will be more adaptable and will be adopted by more and more teams. The first half ended with a score of 2-1. Atletico Madrid came from behind to defeat Barcelona at home thanks to goals from Hasselbank and Baraja. But there is still a second half to go. Yang Hao greeted each of his players at the entrance to the player tunnel and escorted them into the tunnel. He then followed the players into the locker room. Yang Hao was very satisfied with the first half of the game, especially the last half hour or so, which he felt Atletico Madrid did a very good job defensively. But that's not enough. We can apply more pressure to our opponents, which will make them more likely to make mistakes, Yang Hao stated his request. Unlike before, Atletico Madrid players now believe Yang Hao's words. To be honest, I can't guess what tactics Van Gaal will use in the second half, but I think we can't be satisfied with a 2-1 score because we still have the second leg, and we need to gain a big enough advantage at home. So, I have a bold idea. In the second half, we should try to take down our opponent right from the start. After a pause, Yang Hao pulled over the tactical board and circled two players in particular, De Boer and Cocu. Both Dutch centre-backs seemed somewhat lost in the first half. Cocu's performance is understandable, as he has played mostly as a defensive midfielder this season. De Boer, on the other hand, struggled against Hasselbank and also failed to handle Aguilera's attacks down the right flank on several occasions. In the second half, we will continue to focus on these same players because I have noticed that Kluivert, Figo, and Rivaldo are basically not involved in defense, and they are even stingy with their eyes on defense. Yang Hao smiled confidently as he said this. This is his biggest bargaining chip and his greatest source of confidence. What good are there if there are so many star players? Labor and management are not going to fight you one-on-one. I'm going to play team warfare with you now. Tonight, we will utterly crush Barcelona. Please vote with monthly tickets, add to your favorites, recommend, and keep reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 20 Hat Trick. 1. Wait a moment. After sending all the players out of the locker room, Yang Hao called Valleran aside. Many players turned around and looked at them strangely, but they all guessed that the head coach probably had something to say to Valleran. This number 10's performance in the first half was remarkable, the team's offense originated from him. It's obvious that Yang Hao relies on him. Valron is the kind of person who is introverted and has a lot on his mind, but on the surface he appears very introverted and shy. How's your physical fitness? Yang Hao asked with concern. This is actually a problem he is facing now. He doesn't have a good understanding of the player's physical exertion and can only rely on asking questions. After all, this is not a game. In Football Manager, physical fitness data can be clearly quantified, but this is not possible in reality. Yang Hao was thinking that perhaps he should find a better physical trainer and use analysis software and models to derive the player's data more effectively, so that he could see the player's physical exertion more intuitively. It's alright, no problem, Valron nodded. Yang Hao nodded, patted Valron on the shoulder like a true buddy, and the two walked side by side toward the player's tunnel. You played very well in the first half, but I don't think it was enough. Valron looked at his coach with some surprise. They've already created 2 goals, isn't that enough? Yang Hao felt Valron's gaze, turned his head, and smiled at him. In my opinion, you can do even better. In short, Valron was at a loss for how to react. A scholar will die for one who understands him. Or is the head coach being overly harsh on himself? I've always felt that on the football field, even in the top league, if you think of a football team as a group of lost people in the dark, then most of them are groping their way forward, and some don't even dare to look up, but can only look down at their feet, afraid of tripping over something. Yang Hao's words contained a Zen-like meaning, but he believed that someone as intelligent as Valron would definitely be able to understand it. In large-scale football matches like these, the vast majority of players are indeed like that. Unlike fans in the stands or watching the live broadcast on TV, they don't have the same clear perspective as bystanders. Therefore, every team needs someone to step forward, raise the torch high, and walk at the front of the team to light the way for the teammates behind them. Valron stopped abruptly, looked up, and stared at his head coach in disbelief. I told you, instead of letting everyone run around aimlessly, it's better to let them run around one person, the one who holds up the torch and leads the way. And in Atletico Madrid, right now, that person is you. Valron had absolutely no idea what to say. He felt a sense of trust and dependence he had never experienced before. He always has a lot on his mind and might even doubt every word the head coach says, but at this moment, he couldn't have any doubts at all because he was truly moved. Yang Hao has repeatedly demonstrated through his actions that he truly values Valron. Trust me, Juan. Open your heart, trust your teammates, and you will open up a whole new world for yourself. In closing, Yang Hao patted Valron on the shoulder encouragingly and then left. Behind him, Valron raised his head high, staring directly at the coach's back, his eyes becoming even more determined. If the first half saw Atletico Madrid come back from 2 goals down to defeat Barcelona, but they were dominated by Barcelona for the entire half, then the start of the second half surprised everyone. From the very beginning, Atletico Madrid reversed their passive situation from the first half and launched a fierce attack on Barcelona. They no longer passively retreated to the midfield line, but actively pushed forward and played with great determination. The first half defeat dealt a heavy blow to Barcelona's morale. During halftime, Van Gaal instructed his players to pay attention to Atletico Madrid's connection on both flanks, with a focus on marking Valron. But in the second half, everyone noticed that Valron became even more active. His enthusiasm for the game was noticeably higher, he began to actively engage in defense and participate in offense. Especially just 3 minutes into the game, after completing a beautiful short pass and 1-2 with Solari on the left flank in the middle, he suddenly passed the ball diagonally through the gaps between the players to the left flank. Capdevila isn't particularly fast for a winger, but his awareness of making forward runs is excellent. He made a run down the wing before Solari could cut inside, and just then received a pass from Valron. After advancing down the left flank to the left side of the penalty area, Capdevila glanced inside the box and delivered a curling cross into the center of the 6-yard box. Then Hasselbank, who was receiving the ball in the middle, quickly moved forward and used his body to force De Boer behind him. Without even jumping, he headed the ball into the Barcelona goal. Hesp reacted too slowly and couldn't stop it. Goal. 48th minute. 48th minute. Atletico Madrid scores again. My God, just 3 minutes into the second half, Atletico Madrid scored again with a brilliant cross from the left wing. Hasselbank made it 3-1. Who would have thought that Atletico Madrid would launch an attack right from the start of the second half? Look at Atletico Madrid's combination play on the left flank this time. Solari's 1-2 pass with Valorant tied down several Barcelona defenders, leaving the entire left flank open, and Capdevila's crucial run into the box played a decisive role. Of course, the most important thing is Valorant's pass, which was very delicate, like a scalpel, and it went right through Barcelona's defense. I have to say, Atletico Madrid played exceptionally well tonight, and they're only getting better. Hasselbank scored twice. The Dutch striker is back in form. Despite conceding another goal early in the game, Van Gaal showed no intention of backing down. Instead, just 4 minutes after conceding, he substituted midfielder Xavi with Litmanen. This is a very clear signal to strengthen the attack in the frontcourt. Barcelona's formation also changed, no longer a 4-3-3 formation, but an irregular formation. Yang Hao remained unmoved and immediately signaled to his players to increase the pressure and take down Barcelona in one fell swoop. During this period, Atletico Madrid put a lot of pressure on Barcelona, especially with their high pressing and pressing tactics that Barcelona found very difficult to adapt to. In contrast, Atletico Madrid continued to score goals, and their morale grew stronger with each game. In the 59th minute, Pablo Garcia fouled Litmanen and was shown a yellow card. Barcelona took a quick free kick, hoping to catch the opponent off guard, but Santi Denia blocked the ball in time. Baraja controlled the ball and passed it to Valorant, who dribbled forward a couple of steps before suddenly sending a through ball. Inside the penalty area, Hasselbank, with his back to Cocu, controlled the ball and turned. The Dutch centre-back had been making physical contact with Hasselbank, but when his opponent turned, he tried to turn as well, and somehow his foot slipped. De Boer rushed over to cover immediately, but it was too late. Hasselbank controlled the ball, turned, and unleashed another powerful shot. The ball, like a cannonball, blasted into Barcelona's goal with unstoppable force. Goal. Atletico Madrid again. Hasselbank again. 4-1. Hat-trick. Atletico Madrid scored 2 goals in the second half, and Barcelona's entire defense was unable to stop Atletico Madrid's attack. The situation is very bad right now, especially for Van Gaal's team. Their attacking play is not threatening, while their defense is making frequent mistakes. As we said before, Barcelona has a wealth of star players, but they play very disorganized, especially this season. Internal conflicts in the locker room and conflicts between star players have made the team very loose. Originally, Atletico Madrid was also performing poorly, but tonight's game showed us a very competitive Atletico Madrid again. It's just unknown whether they can carry this performance into the league. We all know that many teams experience a kind of curse-like inconsistency in their performance, performing well in one competition and poorly in another. This is more about the players' mentality and the team's confidence. Hopefully Atletico Madrid can overcome this problem well. At that moment, the camera switched to the sidelines, focusing on Hasselbank, who had just scored a hat-trick. The Dutch striker and his teammates are excitedly cheering for the camera on the sidelines, celebrating his goal. That's a hat-trick. A hat-trick against Barcelona. Rijkaard, did you see that? Standing on the sidelines, Yang Hao turned his head and saw that Van Gaal had already sat back down in the away team's bench, looking helpless, while his assistant sitting next to him was chattering away. He had no interest in speculating about these things. When he saw the players return to the field after finishing their celebrations, he immediately gave Hasselbank and the others a thumbs up, a double 666. There is no more straightforward way to praise someone. Especially the Atletico Madrid players, after seeing this, felt that the head coach's 666 was a thumbs up for them, and they all laughed out loud. Some even waved to the head coach. Only then did Yang Hao finally breathe a sigh of relief. At 4-1, the score has barely stabilized. Now it's up to Barcelona to mount a comeback. Yang Hao has already made preparations, and the next step is to replace Aguilera with Fernandoso. The veteran player is exhausted, so after Fernandoso came on, the focus was on strengthening the midfield defense, especially protecting the left flank, to alleviate the defensive pressure on the midfield after their energy levels were depleted. With her current training level, Aguilera cannot withstand such high-intensity competition, especially with 2 matches a week. Kiko will replace Hasselbank, who will save his energy for the weekend league match. The last substitution is a flexible substitution, and we haven't decided on it yet. As Yang Hao predicted, Barcelona made a second substitution, replacing Gabri with Reiziger. After the substitution, Reiziger moved to right-back, Puyol moved to centre-back, and Cocu was pushed to midfield. At this point, Barcelona was actually playing somewhat like a 4-2-3-1 formation. Van Gaal is making a final, desperate gamble. Please vote for me, add this to your favorites, recommend it, and keep reading. End of this chapter.